A voice commands everyone to get into battle formation, stressing the need to defeat a huge monster that day without fail. One of the fighters angrily asks where the monster is, only to be warned by someone else that the monster is right behind him. The fighter turns around in shock and terror. At a crucial moment, another fighter appears and slashes the monster with a decisive sword strike, while the first fighter, who was in danger, and another companion look on in astonishment. The first fighter asks the newcomer as if he knows him, while a white-haired elf also seems surprised by the fighter's presence, wondering why he has come here. After the battle ends, the elf speaks with the rescuer, expressing his deep gratitude and saying he doesn't know how to thank him. The elf apologizes for any trouble he may have caused in the past, and tells him that he has saved his life and protected the peace of their tribe, assuring him that he will never forget this kindness. A system message appears, indicating the player's first achievement, an outsider who gained the trust of an elf, granting him free movement in the elf race's territories. The elf adds that his younger sister also has something to say to the fighter. His sister steps forward and reminds him of her previous offer for him to become her companion. The character receives another first achievement, the title, An Outsider Who Gained an Elf as a Companion, allowing him to use equipment of the elf race. The elf maiden agrees to his request, saying she would like that too, then hesitantly adds the word, and. The scene shifts to a joyous wedding ceremony, where the bride and groom celebrate amidst the cheers of the crowd. The fighter and the elf maiden exchange rings and kiss each other. A new achievement notification appears, announcing that the player is the first outsider to marry an elf woman, but a powerful voice suddenly interrupts the notification and orders it to stop. The scene changes completely to a man standing on a stage in front of an audience, telling them he spent countless hours thinking about how to present what he is about to say. The man announces that the game Ares is not just a simple game, but that all the characters in it are equipped with artificial intelligence that allows them to make their own decisions and act based on their own personalities, describing Ares as another world. The audience is stunned, and one person asks if what he just saw was real gameplay footage. The presentation continues by asserting that Ares is not just a realistic game, but that Purium Lightede has created a new world. This was achieved through the application of a superior artificial intelligence, from which a divine being was born, which evaluates users itself and can grant them amazing abilities based on their achievements. The speaker explains that whoever receives a revelation from the god of Ares will gain special powers and can become a hero, or even build their own forces and rule as a king. In short, players can achieve everything possible in reality, and even impossible things can be achieved in Ares. One of the attendees expresses his doubt about whether everything that was said is true, but decides that he definitely wants to try the game because of its amazing quality. Enthusiasm erupts among the audience as they chant the name Mr. Lee Si-jin and ask how to buy it and that they want to start immediately. A comment appears explaining that in the year 2045, the game Ares was developed and the reaction to it was resounding, as its impact was not limited to the gaming industry, but extended to change the culture of the entire world. Its user count surpassed 1 billion in an instant. A year later, a new player stands and expresses his astonishment, saying that the game is more realistic than he had heard. Another player expresses his deep admiration, noting that the experience feels like a real journey inside the beginner's zone. One player realizes that a person's physical abilities in the real world are reflected inside the game. One player draws his companion's attention to a scene in front of them, pointing to an event that has been in the game since its launch, smashing a wooden dummy, and it is said that 1.2 billion people have tried to accomplish it, but they have all failed. It is rumored among the players that success in the wooden dummy challenge grants the winner a very special Ares game capsule worth 50 million won, in addition to a 5-point increase in all their stats. Although the quest seems simple and requires only 10 strikes, the number of challengers has recently decreased. The reason for this is that the prevailing consensus considers this challenge impossible, especially after a series of national sports representatives failed, and even the gold medalist hero Hanul failed to break it. For this reason, there was much talk about this challenge, but the players stood gathered without any of them trying, as they were all waiting for the arrival of humanity's true and final hope. Suddenly, a voice from the crowd asked them to make way, and a burly man named Medusok, who was described as the strongest man among humans, appeared, surprising the onlookers. Medusok looked at the wooden dummy and pointed out that it was the same one Hanul had failed to break. His size was so immense that some commented he didn't seem to be of their same race, and rumors spread that he could defeat a bear with his bare hands. His giant figure stood before the wooden dummy, making it look dwarfed beside him, leading some to speculate that he might succeed in smashing it before completing the 10 strikes. Medusok announced that the precious capsule would be his, then delivered a fierce blow to the dummy. The crowd erupted in cheers of admiration after the wooden dummy was pushed back a great distance by the blow, wondering if a challenger would finally succeed this time. Meanwhile, elsewhere, 2 developers were watching the scene, one of them expressing hope that Medusok would succeed so that the protest calls pouring in would stop. but his colleague seemed worried, saying that if this man also failed after Hanul, it would likely cause a huge mess. His colleague explained that the next day's newspaper headlines would be filled with accusations against the company for creating an impossible quest to attract attention, and Ares is obsessed with recruiting users and making money. The employee concluded that if he failed, it would mean they would have to interfere with the Ares system, an unprecedented action. His colleague wondered if the CEO would accept that, but she insisted that he, as the team leader, had to get it done, threatening to resign if he didn't succeed. Back in the game, a message appeared on the screen. Quest failed. Please try again. Medusak was in a state of shock, unable to believe he had failed. In the office, the team leader put his hand on his face in despair, saying they were in trouble. His colleague suggested they run away quickly before the protest calls started, and jokingly invited him to dinner on his treat. At that moment, another employee called them over to tell the team leader that a new challenger was stepping up. The team leader asked indifferently if he looked like he would succeed, and the employee pointed out that the new challenger was wearing the basic gear a player gets when creating a character, and that his weapon looked like it was from the cash shop, but many players who relied on such tools had already failed. The employee apologized for saying something unnecessary, but the team leader reassured him it was okay, as he too had had moments of hope. He then decided to go for dinner and come back later. But as he was turning to leave, he and his colleague heard a loud and sudden sound that made them wonder in astonishment where it came from. It was the sound of the new challenger delivering a devastating blow to the wooden dummy, after which a global message appeared congratulating him. The following messages announced that he was the first user to successfully destroy the wooden dummy, and that he had gained 5 points for all his stats and 200 fame points. The team leader and his colleague stood in complete shock, wondering what had just happened, and who this skilled player could be, especially since Medusak had been their last hope. Then the team leader realized the amazing truth. This hero was most likely just an ordinary person. In the office, the stunned team leader ordered his colleague to look up the grade of the sword the challenger had used. The employee told him that the search result was a bit strange, to which the team leader replied that this was normal. It would have been strange if it weren't. She then revealed the details, explaining that the sword, named, was of epic grade, with an attack power of 143 and full durability, and had a usage restriction requiring level 40 or higher, with no restrictions on its creator. The team leader was extremely shocked upon hearing that the sword was epic, and began to wonder about the identity of this mysterious man and what his true nature was. The scene shifts to a dream or memory, where the clang of metal echoes in a blacksmith's workshop. The protagonist remembers the blazing fire that was capable of stealing all the sweat from his body, and sees an image of his father working hard in front of the furnace. In the dream, the young man looks at his tired hands, and then at his father, telling him that he has returned. The young man embraces his father, vowing to protect him, but the dream quickly turns into a horrifying nightmare. The young man finds his father surrounded by flames, screaming from the intense heat. The son screams in terror, begging his father to get out of the fire and urging him to escape. The young man wakes up suddenly, panting and with tears in his eyes, realizing he had the same dream again. The next scene appears in the real world, specifically in the lobby of a hospital in Seoul, Korea. There, the young man, named Kim Ji-hoon, ironically thinks about the people who still cling to the hope of breaking the wooden dummy, realizing that physical strength alone is not enough for that. A friend interrupts him, annoyed, reminding him that he had asked him not to call him during the day. Kim Ji-hoon justifies his action by saying he can't meet him in the evening because of his work, and that he can't even enter Ji-hoon's father's room at the hospital. His friend sighs and asks what he wants, and Kim Ji-hoon comments on his heavy clothes and asks if he isn't feeling hot. His friend gives him a threatening look and asks if he wants to die, to which Kim Ji-hoon immediately apologizes. Then, Kim Ji-hoon gets to the point and asks his friend if he has heard of the game Ares. He explains that it's the most famous game at the moment and operates with a superior artificial intelligence, then tells him about a special event for beginners in the game. He explains that no one has succeeded in this event yet. Even prominent celebrities have failed, but the prize for success is a VVIP gaming capsule worth 50 million won. His friend replies coolly, questioning the point of trying if 1 billion people have already failed, adding that he doesn't play video games in the first place. Kim Ji-hoon admits that it will be difficult, but asserts that it is not impossible, then tells his friend that when it comes to breaking that wooden dummy, he might have a chance, which puzzles his friend. Kim Ji-hoon takes his friend to a place with gaming capsules, revealing that he has prepared a standard Ares gaming capsule for him worth 10 million won, which shocks Ji-hoon. His friend comments that the game is expensive and yet 1 billion people play it, to which Kim Ji-hoon replies that it's worth the investment. He adds that if things go well, players can get amazing rewards and even trade with real-world currency, which is why everyone is flocking to it. Kim Ji-hoon finishes his explanation and suggests they go in, revealing that he has tried the game a little himself. Kim Ji-hoon's friend asks about the source of the expensive gaming capsule, but Kim Ji-hoon ignores the question and urges him to think about how much money they could earn through it. His friend doubts it, questioning if there's any guarantee of profit and calling his friend's idea crazy. Kim Ji-hoon defends his idea enthusiastically, insisting it's an investment and that Ji-hoon has a real chance. His friend demands he explain the basis for this supposed opportunity. Kim Ji-hoon reveals the secret of his confidence, the existence of the Blacksmith class in the game Ares. He then addresses his friend as Kang Hyun-soo, revealing his true identity as the only son of a world-renowned master craftsman and his sole heir. Kim Ji-hoon wonders how a wooden dummy could pose a challenge to someone with Hyun-soo's skills. Hyun-soo removes his hat, revealing scars on his face, and tells his friend that he has never seen his true condition since the accident. He says this is his situation now, admitting he's not in a state to try anything. Past memories show the horrific accident, which was a massive fire. Hyun-soo remembers running through the flames, screaming for his father, trying to wake him up and save him from the fire. Hyun-soo recounts how that accident took everything from him. He barely survived, but his father never regained consciousness, and his family was too poor to cover his exorbitant medical costs. Hyun-soo was forced to work in strenuous manual labor jobs. After spending 10 years in his father's footsteps, he remembers the hammer he used to forge countless metals, but even that work has now become a thing of the past, something he can no longer do. Hyun-soo explains to his friend that since the accident, he has been unable to use the strength in his right arm, making manual labor difficult, let alone the craft of blacksmithing. He tells him he will take care of his own problems, but appreciates his attempt to help. He then asks him to return the capsule, calling him a fool for wasting 10 million won, and then leaves, saying it's time for his part-time job. Kim Ji-hoon shouts at him, calling him the real fool, and reveals that he knows about his difficult financial situation and how he struggles monthly to pay his father's hospital bills, wondering how long he can continue like this. Kim Ji-hoon continues his confrontation, asking him about his life and future, and whether he will leave his injured body as it is forever, insisting that this game can fix everything. He reminds him that the full cost of treatment is about 3 billion won, a fantastical amount, but that doesn't mean he should give up. Kim Ji-hoon reminds him of his old passion and dream of living as a blacksmith for the rest of his life, and shouts enthusiastically that he can achieve that in the game Ares. Kim Ji-hoon vows to take responsibility for the 10 million won and begs him to listen to him just once. He pleads with him to give it just one try, promising he won't pressure him after that. The memory of the fire and his trapped father flashes again in Hyun-soo's mind, who stands silently looking at his trembling and weak right hand, as the scene shifts to a construction site where his work is supposed to begin. At the construction site, Hyun-soo tries to focus on his work, thinking that his friend Ji-hoon has filled his head with pointless ideas. He tells himself he must hurry and earn money for his father's treatment. But as he works, a loud clang of metal echoes in his heart, awakening a deep nostalgia for his past. In the end, involuntarily, Hyun-soo finds himself returning to the place with the game capsules, admitting that the sound of metal led him there. His friend's enthusiastic words about his dream of living as a blacksmith and how he could achieve it in Ares echo in his mind. He fondly remembers the blazing fire and the ring of metal that was part of his life, and decides to enter the game, vowing to his father that he will hear that sound again. Upon entering, system messages welcome him to the world of Ares and announce the start of character creation. He is asked to set a nickname, and Hyun-soo chooses Hyun-soo. After that, the character customization process begins. Hyun-soo is surprised when the system starts analyzing his body type and discovers that the scar on his face from the accident has also appeared on his character in the game. After the analysis is complete, the system asks if he wishes to proceed with this appearance. After a moment of hesitation, Hyun-soo agrees. The character creation process ends, and the search for a server begins. As soon as he enters the game world, Hyun-soo notices two amazing things. The scar on his face has disappeared, and more importantly, the strength has fully returned to his right hand. He thinks of his friend Kim Ji-hoon and realizes he now owes him 10 million won and decides he will work hard to repay this debt. He is then summoned to a random area and transported to the beginner's zone in the Barden region, specifically to Lin's blacksmith workshop. Inside, he finds an old blacksmith struggling with his work, vowing that he will never give up, and determined to forge a sword that surpasses that of an opponent of his. The blacksmith was striking the metal with force, desperately pleading for his attempt to succeed. Hyun-soo calmly interrupts him, telling him that this is not the right way to do it, which startles the blacksmith. The blacksmith is surprised by the presence of a stranger and asks what he just said. Hyun-soo repeats that the way the blacksmith is working is not the proper way. The blacksmith gets angry and asks Hyun-soo with disdain, being just a kid and a stranger, what he could possibly know about blacksmithing, and Hyun-soo tells him he will never make a strong sword this way. Hyun-soo explains that he knows it's none of his business, but he couldn't stand by and watch the blacksmith sincerely try to forge a great sword in the wrong way. The blacksmith scoffs at his words, wondering if he's talking as if he really knows how to do it. After a moment of thought, the blacksmith decides he has nothing to lose and hands the hammer to Hyun-soo, challenging him to show what he can do. He tells him he will watch him closely to see if he has the skills to back up his confidence. Hyun-soo thinks to himself that his original plan was to approach the blacksmith and ask to use his workshop, but this development might also be in his favor. He then turns to the blacksmith and tells him he has one condition. The blacksmith is surprised by Hyun-soo's condition, who explains that if he proves his skills, he must be allowed to keep the sword he makes. In return, Hyun-soo promises to show him something worth watching, and the blacksmith calls him arrogant. The blacksmith laughs, saying he likes this confidence and hopes it lasts. But he warns Hyun-soo that if he fails, he will pay the price for his arrogance, which Hyun-soo agrees to. Hyun-soo picks up the hammer and thinks that 3 years have passed. He admits to himself that despite speaking confidently, he is not sure if he still has the talent. But as soon as he starts striking the metal, the familiar feeling returns, and he feels confidence fill him, realizing he can do it. Images of his sick father and his friend Ji-hoon flash through his mind, driving him to work with all his determination, as if asking them to wait a little longer. Forgotten feelings begin to return to him, from the familiar clang of steel to the burning heat on his skin. He feels overjoyed to be back in his natural place, realizing that his body still remembers the craft, and his confidence that he can succeed is renewed. The old blacksmith watches his work, and at first he thought Hyun-soo was just a bad imitator, but he soon admits that his form is not bad and that he must have some experience. However, the blacksmith believes this is the furthest Hyun-soo can go, and is puzzled by his overwhelming happiness while working. The blacksmith believes that enjoying work doesn't matter. Results are everything in this world, and without a special skill, Hyun-soo will inevitably hit a dead end. He feels that his decision to let him try was a waste of time because it is impossible for a player in the beginner's area to have a skill in blacksmithing. Suddenly, the blacksmith sees something that amazes him in the metal Hyun-soo is working on. He notices that Hyun-soo is using an advanced technique where he folds, reheats, and tempers the steel repeatedly, concluding that it is a method to increase strength while eliminating impurities. The blacksmith is shocked, wondering how he never thought of such a simple technique. Despite his suspicion that it might just be a trick, he decides to use his special skill to assess the metal's grade. The result shows that the steel has been upgraded from grade D to grade C. The blacksmith cannot believe what he sees. Although he has forged grade C steel before, it has never been upgraded this quickly. The blacksmith admits that Hyun-soo was not just babbling, but he still believes this is his limit. He is certain he cannot raise the grade any further, and believes that some cheap tricks will not change the fact that without a skill, Hyun-soo is no different from him. Time passes as the blacksmith watches until he is overcome by sleepiness. He wakes up later to discover that it is late and is shocked to see that Hyun-soo is still working tirelessly. Hyun-soo continues to hammer throughout the night with intense focus. The blacksmith wonders how this young man doesn't get tired. As dawn breaks, Hyun-soo finishes his work, and a new evaluation message appears. Steel, grade B, leaving the blacksmith in a state of complete astonishment. He cannot believe it is possible to reach grade B without any special skill. Then he notices that Hyun-soo has not stopped yet, and wonders in shock if he is aiming for a higher grade. After a long night of hard work, Hyun-soo feels exhausted, wondering if he has overexerted himself. The old blacksmith, impressed by his skill, steps forward and offers to help, and Hyun-soo thanks him for his offer. They work together to finish the raw piece of metal. The blacksmith looks at the result in complete awe, declaring it a grade A ingot, which can be used to make a rare grade sword, something he never thought possible. The blacksmith explains that he has a skill that allows him to see the grade of items, and that in his life, he has never seen a magic grade item in the beginner's village, let alone a rare grade. He excitedly tells Hyun-soo that with this metal, he can forge a one-of-a-kind sword. But Hyun-soo tells him it's still too early to celebrate. He still has to finish the handle and polish the blade to a much finer edge. He explains that the sword must be made to withstand immense force without breaking, and that the edge of the blade is still far from perfect. The blacksmith laughs, admitting he has never met anyone as strange as Hyun-soo, who simply replies that he has always loved blacksmithing since he was a child. At that, the blacksmith suggests that Hyun-soo try forging the sword again, but this time with a new material he provides. The blacksmith reveals a large, glowing piece of mithril ore, explaining that it is a family heirloom passed down through generations. Hyun-soo asks why he is being given something so precious, and the blacksmith replies that he has learned a lot thanks to him and that this ore is far beyond his skills. and he wants to see what kind of sword a true master can make with it. Hyun-soo is thrilled at the idea of working with a legendary metal he has only read about in stories. Although it's a risk since he has never worked with it before, he decides he cannot refuse this offer. Then, the blacksmith awkwardly asks if he can call Hyun-soo master. Hyun-soo flatly refuses his request, threatening not to use the mithril if he insists, and the blacksmith immediately backs down. 1 month later, the legendary sword, Daylight, Epic, is completed, possessing immense attack power and special abilities, and is described as a legendary sword the likes of which will never be seen again in the beginner's zone. Back at the Purium Company Management Center, the developers are reviewing the amazing events of the Level 1 player, Hyun-soo. The team leader is still impressed, but his colleague urges him to get back to work. She complains about the lack of information available on the player, but then reveals his basic personal information, Kim Hyun-soo, 23 years old, who logged in from an acquaintance's house. She explains that she obtained this information from his application for the VVIP Capsule Prize. She adds that Hyun-soo strongly requested to keep his real-world identity confidential. The developers wonder why he would want to remain anonymous, and the team leader concludes that he must have his own reasons for avoiding the spotlight and fame that will inevitably come his way. At the management center, the team leader asks about Hyun-soo's current location. His colleague reports that he has just entered the hunting training center. Inside, a trainer named Relson greets Hyun-soo with disdain, pointing out that this is where the real monsters start to appear, and that as a level 1 man, he has no chance of passing the test. He tells Hyun-soo to leave to avoid wasting his time, advising him to go hunt some rabbits and come back when he is ready. Hyun-soo is confident in his high stats that are not visible to the trainer and insists that he will not waste his time. Relson sighs with boredom but reluctantly agrees, asking Hyun-soo to choose one of the swords and follow him. Hyun-soo tells him that if any sword will do, he would prefer to use his own. The narration reveals that Hyun-soo spent a full month in the beginner's zone, which is usually completed in 30 minutes, resulting in a massive boost to his basic stats. Additionally, he possesses the only epic-grade sword in the area, but is still at level 1 and without a class. Meanwhile, the team leader Kim Tae-suk expresses his concern over this strange situation, wondering if they should leave everything to the super AI Ares without intervention. A high-ranking company executive shares the same concern, but smiles confidently, knowing that what awaits Hyun-soo is a legendary class offer. Back in the game, Relson is annoyed by Hyun-soo's request to use a sword he made himself, and thinks to himself how pitiful it is for someone to throw away their future for a worthless profession like blacksmithing. The test begins, and Relson explains that the place is teeming with monsters, and that a trained swordsman is more important than any shoddy weapon. He sarcastically wonders why someone aspiring to be a blacksmith is here, which causes his affinity with Hyun-soo to drop. Hyun-soo thinks that he has seen this reaction many times in reality, where the dream of blacksmithing is considered a useless dream, but he feels that in Ares, his efforts can finally be acknowledged. Hyun-soo asks the instructor about the most prominent swordsman trained by him, and then boldly asks for a tougher test than the one that swordsman took. Relson becomes furious inside at the arrogance of this beginner, for although he is just an instructor, he knows talent when he sees it. Due to this provocation, Relson agrees to give Hyun-soo a special trial. He explains that he only gives these special trials to the rare few who show true promise. He leads him to another area, pointing out that the highest record achieved here is the 3rd stage trial. Relson summons a swift goblin of level 6 and asks Hyun-soo if he is sure of his decision. He then sets the penalty for failure, being banned from the center for a full week. Hyun-soo ignores the threat and calmly asks if the 3rd stage is the final trial. Hyun-soo declares that he would like to take on all the trials, up to the final stage. Relson becomes extremely angry, believing this young man is looking down on his training and testing his patience. Relson angrily agrees to the challenge and summons the 4th final stage trial monster. A mad goblin of level 15 appears before them. Relson thinks to himself that almost no one in the world has managed to pass the 3rd stage, and no one has ever surpassed the 4th. The fight begins, and the goblin attacks fiercely, but Hyun-soo manages to skillfully dodge its attacks. Hyun-soo thinks that any blacksmith can see the latent power a weapon holds, and activates his sword Daylight's active skill, called Durable Sword, to enhance his physical defense. The sword releases immense power, and Hyun-soo declares that no weapon here can surpass his sword, then defeats the swift goblin from the previous stage. But another goblin ambushes him and lands a powerful blow. Relson notes that the blow was critical and instantaneous, which is why swift goblins are considered the nightmare of beginners. Relson believes that Hyun-soo is done for. No matter how good the weapon, it is worthless without skill. but to his surprise, Hyunsu survives the critical hit with 82% of his health points remaining. Hyunsu attributes his survival to the long time he spent crafting weapons, which significantly boosted his stats, especially strength and vitality. Relson declares that the real danger begins now, as the Mad Goblin uses a special skill called Thorns of Madness, which causes Hyunsu to become dizzy and his vision to blur. Although Relson is impressed by Hyunsu's performance, he believes this is his end, and that the battle will end here. But Hyunsu decides to focus, trust the weapon he made, and do everything in his power. He activates the passive skill of his sword, Daylight, called Swift Blade, which greatly increases his attack speed. Hyunsu unleashes a series of swift attacks, realizing that this way he can close the gap in levels. The developers are shown watching the battle in a state of awe. With a final blow, Hyunsu succeeds in defeating the remaining goblins. Relson stands amazed and joyful, shouting that this young man did what no one else could. He praises Hyunsu, saying that although his strikes seemed random, every drop drew out the true power of the blade, and enthusiastically assumes that Hyunsu must have trained in swordsmanship before. Hyunsu explains that he only learned that a blacksmith should be able to handle the weapons he makes, nothing more. Relson notices the muscles and scars on Hyunsu's arms, a testament to his hard work. Relson realizes he is in the presence of a true blacksmith and apologizes for his previous rudeness, bringing their affinity to its maximum. Relson makes a suggestion to Hyunsu out of respect for his talent, asking him if he has considered becoming a Mad Master, and at that moment, a window appears offering him a class change quest to the legendary class Mad Master. Meanwhile, the developers watch the scene in shock, disbelieving that this illogical event is actually happening. They realize that just the offer of the legendary Mad Master class, which surpasses even the epic Mad Knight class, automatically classifies Hyunsu as a second-tier user requiring special management. The team leader expresses his satisfaction with this development, but knows that accepting the class change quest means there is no turning back, and that the Mad Master leads hundreds of knights, meaning Hyunsu will become a protector of the world. In the game, Relson urges Hyunsu to accept the offer, assuring him that with his talent he could become a king among knights. But Hyunsu politely refuses the offer, firmly declaring that he is a blacksmith, not a knight. Everyone, both in the game and at the management center, is astonished by his decision. Relson bursts into admiring laughter, describing Hyunsu's persistence as truly wonderful. Hyunsu thinks to himself that he thought he would never hold a hammer again, but in this game, he felt his life as a blacksmith was starting anew. Relson accepts his decision and gives him a letter of recommendation for a hidden quest to meet the local lord. As a reward for passing the trial, he gives him a rusty armor worn by a former Mad Master, confident that Hyunsu will find a use for it. Relson enthusiastically encourages him to prove himself and achieve what others could not, and Hyunsu promises to do his best. The developers conclude that Hyunsu has overcome his biggest crisis and that the spark of potential still remains. Hyunsu has now begun his path to become the god of blacksmithing. The system messages announce the end of the tutorial training period and the start of the main quest, and that the real game begins now. But before he can proceed, he is suddenly logged out of the game. He returns to reality to remember that he has responsibilities, like paying the gas bill. He checks his bank account to find it almost empty, and realizes that his priority is to secure his father's hospital fees and their living expenses. His friend Ji-hoon calls him to ask if he has finished the training zone, and Hyunsu replies that he has just arrived at the village. Ji-hoon excitedly tells him to head to the auction house first. He explains that this is where items are sold for gold, and that gold can be exchanged for real money, revealing that this is the real reason he got Hyunsu into Ares. Ji-hoon concludes his speech by saying that he has never seen anything more wonderful than the swords that Hyunsu and his father used to make. Ji-hoon encourages his friend Hyunsu over the phone, telling him that once he gets the VVIP capsule with 99.9% synchronization, his experience will be even more amazing, and urges him to flood the world with the works of the greatest blacksmith. Hyunsu feels grateful and thanks him. After the call, Hyunsu feels his path is now clear. He decides to focus on crafting and quests to earn gold, realizing he also needs to manage his stamina to achieve this. Hyunsu starts exercising, realizing that playing games consumes a lot of energy, though it doesn't compare to the effort of real blacksmithing. As he runs, he vows to his father that he will endure and ensure he wakes up again. Hyunsu returns to the world of Ares and enters the auction house directly. He chooses a name for his shop, Hyun's Forge. Hyunsu waits as his shop tool is being created. After the system finished creating the shop, the system grants him the ability to use the auction panel anytime, anywhere. Hyunsu wonders what he should put up for sale first, and remembers he has one prototype he made in the workshop. He reviews the details of Hyun's first sword, a rare grade sword, and recalls that the average market price for similar swords is about 70 gold pieces. and that his friend advised him not to sell it too cheap. He decides to list the sword for 100 gold pieces, then intends to explore the village systems while he waits. An alert was sent to all players regarding the sale. Elsewhere, a player notices that the auction board has exploded with activity due to an unusual post. The bidding price for Hyunsu's sword starts to rise rapidly, surpassing 300 gold pieces. This catches the attention of a member of the Golden Shield Guild, who rushes to inform the guild's vice captain about this amazing item. The member explains that the sword's creator is a level 1 player with no class, and that he made the best sword from the most primitive raw materials, and it even has an option for enhancement. The vice captain analyzes the situation, noting that using low-quality materials for enhancement reduces the chance of success, meaning the creator was clever in saving costs. He concludes that this weapon, with a small investment, could remain effective up to level 50. He also notes that the sword's name, the First Sword, makes it a valuable first piece for collectors. The vice captain realizes that the prestige that comes from being the first to discover and purchase the work of this talented craftsman is the real gain, and decides to proceed with the purchase. Meanwhile, Hyunsu feels a bit embarrassed and anxious, wondering if his sword will even sell since it was just a practice piece. Suddenly, a notification appears announcing that Hyun's first sword has been sold. Hyunsu is shocked by how quickly it sold. He checks the final selling price and is amazed to see it sold for 1,008 gold pieces, after he listed it for only 100. He quickly realizes that this amount is equivalent to over 1 million Korean won, and he is overcome with a feeling of happiness and disbelief. Hyunsu discovers that the buyer is the Golden Shield Guild, and he receives a message from them congratulating him and offering him an exclusive sales contract or to join the guild. He looks up information about the guild and is even more shocked to discover that it is a massive blacksmithing guild with 780,000 followers. Hyunsu remembers his friend Ji-hoon's words that gaining followers is much harder than leveling up, and that having a large number of followers means significant user interest, and this interest can directly lead to profit. He checks the follower count for his shop, Hyun's Forge, to find it's only 82. However, when he opens his message box, he finds it flooded with offers to join from various guilds. Hyunsu realizes that Ares is the place waiting for the blacksmiths who are disappearing from reality, and that the value of a craftsman's skills shines even brighter when supported by precise data and numbers. Hyunsu decides it's not yet time to join a guild and heads to the Lord's castle, determined to show his true worth, which begins now. In the castle, Lord Vance was talking with his advisor Bell, wondering if repairing an artifact was truly impossible. Bell explains that the restoration process carries a risk of failure, which could lead to losing the piece forever, which is why they must find the best restoration expert on the continent. Vance comments that this expert is only in the capital. Bell confirms he is an eccentric person who refuses to meet anyone, making summoning him difficult. The Lord feels sad that he cannot abandon the affairs of his territory and go himself, especially since the uniquely shaped bow is his father's only legacy. It is revealed that Bell is actually a level 100 scammer player disguised as a blacksmith who has spent a week gaining the Lord's trust to deceive him. Bell offers the Lord to take the bow to the capital for restoration for 300 gold pieces. Before the Lord agrees, Hyunsu suddenly enters, interrupting them and confidently declaring that the bow can be restored right here on the spot. Bell seethes with anger inside as his plan is about to be ruined. The Lord asks Hyunsu, in shock, if he can really repair the burnt bow. Here in the castle, without needing to take it to a blacksmith shop, the Lord orders a guard to inquire about the man's identity, and the guard replies that he is the person who came with a letter of recommendation from instructor Relson. The Lord is surprised at the mention of an instructor from the beginner training center. As the Lord of Barden, he officially asks Hyunsu to tell him about his skills and experience. Hyunsu introduces himself, saying his name is Hyunsu, he is level 1, and his class is unemployed. Bell explodes in anger, not believing that a level 1 player dares to speak so arrogantly in front of the Lord. Bell shouts that restoration is a skill only learned by blacksmiths above level 80, and accuses Hyunsu of interfering with his work that he spent a whole week on and orders him to leave. Hyunsu calmly replies, telling Bell that he is mistaken and that this bow is not a recurve bow. Hyunsu corrects Bell's information, explaining that the bow is not a recurve bow, but a gakgung, a traditional Korean composite bow. Confusion appears on the faces of both the Lord and Bell due to the unfamiliar name. Hyunsu addresses the Lord, saying he heard the story from the guard Baker and knows that the Lord wishes to restore his late father's burnt bow, which was a gift from a mysterious foreigner. The Lord confirms that the bow was one of a kind and had never been seen in this land before, but he expresses his weariness of being deceived by strangers with false claims about the family heirloom. He sternly warns Hyunsu to only speak words he can prove. Hyunsu asks to confirm one thing, and surprises the Lord by suggesting that the bow despite being a gift from a foreigner, was actually made in this very land. Hyun-soo explains his deduction, pointing out that he saw a painting of a water buffalo in the hall, and that this animal's horns are considered a precious material even in his world. But what really caught his attention was the bow's curvature, and he reveals the crucial detail. It was made using whale sinew instead of cow sinew, and he asks the Lord for an explanation. The Lord admits that Hyun-soo is right, and explains that the foreigner was his father's friend, a blacksmith. He confirms that the materials used were indeed local and rare: giant water buffalo horns from the Barden swamps, and whale sinew from Barden Harbor. With these precious materials, the friend gifted his father the best bow ever made in Barden. The Lord is impressed by Hyun-soo's ability to notice details that even Bell, who is supposedly a level 100 blacksmith, missed. The Lord expresses his strong desire to save his father's memento. Convinced of Hyun-soo's skill, he officially asks him to restore the bow, leading to Hyun-soo accepting a quest with a reward of 500 gold pieces. The Lord orders Bell to leave for now, and Bell departs with his head bowed. As he walks away, he seethes with rage, vowing revenge on Hyun-soo, who ruined his plan. The Lord asks Hyun-soo what is required to restore the bow. Hyun-soo accurately lists all the necessary materials, from water buffalo horns and whale sinew to specific types of wood and finishing tools, proving his complete knowledge of the bow's composition. Hyun-soo obtains the restoration method for the sniper's gakgung, which includes a list of materials and a warning that the restoration will fail if the success rate is below 70%, which would result in the bow's destruction. Hyun-soo is flooded with childhood memories of learning to make bows from his father. He remembers his father asking if he loved this craft so much even though it filled his hands with calluses. He replies that he loves doing it with him, and his father promises to teach him blacksmithing when he grows up. But for now, he must get used to handling raw materials with his hands. In the present, Hyun-soo whispers with tears in his eyes, "Yes, Dad," and thinks about the high synchronization rate of his gaming capsule. He feels the familiar sensation in his hands and is confident he can restore the bow perfectly, just as his father taught him. Upon seeing this confidence and expertise, Lord Vance offers his help. Hyun-soo and Lord Vance work hard together day and night, with Hyun-soo engrossed in shaping the wooden parts of the bow, while the Lord watches him intently. The Lord admits that working all day is not easy and his strength is starting to wane, but he adds that seeing the happiness on Hyun-soo's face gives him the strength to continue. After a full week, the exhausted Lord asks if he can go back, but Hyun-soo insists he stay to help install the frame. Hyun-soo guesses that the reason the Lord comes every day is his desire to restore his father's memento with his own hands, which the Lord confirms. The Lord explains that this bow is all that remains of his father's memory. Then the Lord asks Hyun-soo why he enjoys the work as well. Hyun-soo replies with a smile that he also has many good memories associated with this craft. They agree that restoring memories takes time and effort. Quick shots show the passing of the next 20 days as they work hard on the various parts of the bow. Finally, the last day arrives. The restoration of the sniper's gakgung is complete, and it is reborn as an epic weapon with stats and abilities far superior to its original form. The Lord stands before his father's statue, wondering if he is watching, and thinking how another mysterious foreigner has gifted him this bow once again. Hyun-soo suggests the Lord try the bow to see if it feels as he remembers. The Lord draws the string and releases an arrow with immense force, and notes in amazement that it doesn't feel the same. Then he bursts out laughing with joy, declaring that it has become much greater than before, and the quest completion message appears. The system announces that his affinity with Lord Vance has reached its maximum due to the incredible success that exceeded 100%. The Lord thanks Hyun-soo, saying that he can now perform his duties with a peaceful heart. The Lord feels that the promised reward is too little for what Hyun-soo has done. As a result of the overwhelming success, the quest reward is upgraded. In addition to 2,000 gold pieces, the Lord grants him free use of the blacksmith's workshop. Hyun-soo is overjoyed, realizing that the gold is equivalent to 2 million won, which is more than enough to cover his expenses for a long time. Then the Lord asks him if he has ever considered learning swordsmanship. The Lord reveals that before he became the Lord of Barden, he was a swordsman himself. He talks about the first swordsmanship, a secret sword art of the Prime Kingdom, the technique that subdued the endless monsters and brought stability to Barden. The Lord tells Hyun-soo that although he is undoubtedly a natural-born blacksmith, he also saw in him the talent of a swordsman. He explains that instructor Relson's recommendation, along with his own personal observations, confirmed this for him. The Lord lists Hyun-soo's qualities, from his exceptional physical condition and quick reflexes to his deep knowledge of weapons, and offers to share a part of the essence of his swordsmanship with him. Lord Vance offers Hyun-soo a skill quest to learn the first swordsmanship training, confident that Hyun-soo will succeed if he works as hard as he did in the workshop. Hyun-soo considers this training an unexpected gift, and a busy month passes. During this month, Hyunsu was busy crafting his own Gakgung bow and restoring the rusty Mad Master armor. Additionally, he underwent intensive training, where he continued to spar with Lord Vance, and successfully completed the first swordsmanship training. When it was time to leave, Hyunsu told the Lord that he was now fully prepared. Wearing his restored armor and carrying his new bow, he explains that his next step is to get a suitable profession. After bidding farewell to the Lord, who tells him he is welcome any time, Hyunsu decides to organize his belongings before setting off. He reviews his new equipment, the Mad Master armor, which compensates for his low level thanks to the damage reflection skill, and the new Gakgung bow, which has an additional 60% accuracy. To cover his expenses, he had also crafted some rare bows and put them up for sale in the auction house. Hyunsu checks the selling price of Hyun's second bow. Elsewhere, someone is watching the auction in disbelief, noting that Black, Korea's #1 player, didn't craft a bow of this quality when he was at level 10. He marvels at how Hyun managed to craft such a bow at level 1 and with only low-quality materials. This person, who is revealed to be Ron, the leader of the Golden Shield Guild, recalls the words of Smith, the world's #1 blacksmith, that everything in the game is decided by Ares, and that the AI Ares, if impressed by a player's actions, grants them a suitable profession, skill, or title. Ron concludes that for the master of Hyun's workshop to be able to craft artifacts of this level, he must hold a legendary class title, just like Smith. Back to Hyun-soo, he is stunned when he sees that the final auction price for his bow is 2,050 gold pieces, equivalent to 2 million won, an amount beyond imagination for an in-game weapon. He also notices that his follower count has jumped to 3,200, and he is so flooded with guild invitations and crafting requests that he can't even check them all. Hyun-soo feels he is ready to set off, and sets his destination, the Holy Land of Blacksmiths, the Tower of Blacksmiths. He travels through the scenic landscapes, until he reaches the towering structure, and is awestruck by its magnificence up close. But he finds the entrance sealed by a magic seal bound with chains, and wonders how to get in. A system message appears, explaining that this is the Tower of the Swordmaker, and that to become a blacksmith, he must break the seal with a sword forged in the magic workshop. Hyun-soo examines the seal and realizes it is made of volcanic basalt rock. He finds the entrance to the magic workshop nearby, and enters it to begin the training required for the test. In the magic workshop, Hyun-soo learns the rules. Materials and tools are provided in infinite quantities. Production time is significantly shortened, but the swords made here can only be used for the test. Hyun-soo thinks about the test, which is to break a stone seal with a sword, and concludes that the test focuses solely on his crafting ability, specifically, crafting a sword capable of cutting stone. Elsewhere in the tower, Ding, the master of the Tower of Swordmakers, sits muttering angrily about worthless fools. He complains that everyone who comes only asks how to make money quickly, and that they are only interested in producing junk using skills and selling it, without any respect for the real work in the workshop. Ding sadly declares that the true path of the blacksmith is dead, and that everyone now only seeks gold. Due to his despair, he allows anyone who simply wants the title of blacksmith to pass a simple test, knowing that their superficial efforts will never enable them to break the real seal. At best, they might scratch it a little. While Ding sees the task as impossible, Hyun-soo decides to make a Damascus sword. The system advises him that this type of sword is only made by professional blacksmiths, and recommends starting with a simple iron dagger. But Hyun-soo insists on trying, believing that as long as he knows the method and has unlimited materials, he can at least try. He remembers his father's words that a sword can cut stone and that he would pass on to him a special forging method he developed himself. Inspired by his father's teachings, he feels confident in his ability to accomplish the task. Hyun-soo gets excited as he sees the possibilities available to him: perfect smelting facilities and equipment, an unlimited supply of ores, and shortened production time. He describes the game as insane, and begins to work with unparalleled enthusiasm and passion. Meanwhile, Ding is suddenly awakened from his sleep by a violent vibration, and he wonders about the source of this tremor. He realizes that the entire tower is shaking, due to someone hammering with immense force. Ding rushes to see what is happening, and is shocked when he sees the sealed stone, which he thought was unbreakable, has been split in half. Ding stands speechless, as he sees Hyun-soo calmly walk through the open entrance. In a moment of awe, Ding declares that the god of blacksmithing has finally appeared. Hyun-soo approaches him and simply asks if he has passed the test. Ding replies that they usually measure ability by the mark the sword leaves on the stone, but since Hyun-soo completely destroyed the stone, they couldn't measure anything. As Hyun-soo wonders if this means a retest, a glowing magic circle appears on the ground. Ding clarifies that it is not a magic circle, but a summoning circle. The Tower Master, Ding, presents his special hammer to Hyun-soo. Hyun-soo accepts it in confusion and receives a system message confirming he has obtained Ding's hammer. A new SS rank quest begins, and Ding tells him that there is a real trial he must now overcome. With his wishes for success as the god of blacksmithing, Hyunsu is suddenly transported to another place. Hyunsu finds himself on the walls of a castle, confused by the sudden transport and wondering if this is a new test. He is surprised by an army of invading orcs advancing towards the castle. An SS rank quest appears, requiring him to defeat the orc army, which shocks him, as he doesn't understand its connection to a blacksmithing quest. The soldiers on the wall see him and cheer for the arrival of reinforcements from the master blacksmith. The condition for completing the quest becomes clear: achieve a 70% contribution among 50 warriors. Hans, the leader of the suppression squad, a level 48 warrior, welcomes him. Hans explains that the orc invasion is getting fiercer and that much of their equipment has been damaged, and he asks Hyunsu to use his skills to repair it quickly. Hyunsu clarifies that there is a misunderstanding. He has not yet changed his class to a blacksmith and possesses no skills. Hans asks in bewilderment about the hammer he is holding, and Hyunsu explains in confusion that he received it as part of a class change test and was sent here for an additional test. When asked about his combat experience, he admits that he is still a complete beginner in fighting. The soldiers are disappointed. They were expecting support but got a beginner who needs protection. Hans orders Hyunsu to stay in the watchtower for his own safety until they return. Suddenly, an orc threw a huge axe towards Hans. Hyunsu quickly rushed towards Hans and parried the axe with surprising ease. He then asks Hans if he can join the fight despite being a beginner. Hyunsu realizes that this is the real test. While Hans looks at him in confusion, he feels confident that if he fights as he did against the goblins, everything will be fine. Hans agrees and tells him to follow Ben's squad. Hans charges into battle, taking the lead. Immediately, Hyunsu feels the immense pressure of a real battle, which is completely different from fighting goblins. Despite this, he feels confident that he will not lose. Hyunsu engages the orcs with skill, succeeds in defeating a level 10 orc, and his level rises to 2, realizing that his month of training was not in vain. Ben watches him in disbelief, amazed at the strength of a player who doesn't have a class. In the heat of battle, the soldier Ben finds himself in imminent danger. Hyunsu notices the situation and immediately switches his weapon to his Korean bow. He fires a powerful and luminous arrow that cuts through the battlefield and hits the orc in the chest, saving Ben's life at the last moment, but another orc suddenly appears from behind him. Hyunsu manages to hit it skillfully as well, and Hyunsu's level rises several times as a result. The soldiers are stunned, wondering how a single arrow could take down such a massive orc. Hans shouts at Ben to snap him out of his shock, warning him that the orcs are now targeting Hyunsu and are attacking him. Ben feels extremely guilty, realizing that Hyunsu has gotten into trouble because of him, and blames himself for losing focus in the battle. Hyunsu, now surrounded, switches back to his daylight sword and unleashes the rampage skill. The skill randomly attacks all enemies within a 10-meter radius, resulting in the death of many orcs. Hyunsu's level rises again, and his contribution to the mission reaches 19%. Joy overwhelms the squad leader Hans, who realizes that the old master had a good reason for sending Hyunsu. Hans feels that with Hyunsu by their side, they can achieve what they previously could not. Hans looked at Hyunsu with sincere admiration, praising his brilliance and the strength he displayed. Enthusiastically, Hans shouts to his soldiers, declaring that today, with Hyunsu, they will annihilate the orc forces. Hyunsu feels like a real part of the squad as the system announces that his performance has boosted the soldiers' morale. Hyunsu continues to fight, and his contribution rises to 28%. But he wonders why his contribution percentage isn't rising as fast as he expected, even though he is killing orcs faster than anyone else. At that moment, a hidden quest is activated. A new, unprecedented chapter begins with the arrival of a formidable enemy. An orc warrior of level 51 appears, and Hans shouts for everyone to stop. Hans recognizes the enemy, saying that, the one we could never defeat, has finally appeared. He is their sworn enemy, and panic spreads among the soldiers. Hans realizes he made a grave mistake. They pushed too far into the fight and have become trapped. Despite the seriousness of the situation, his soldiers declare that they are ready to fight to the end. Ben agrees with them, shouting that they will never retreat, and Hans orders them to attack, as they cannot continue the battle like this forever. Hyunsu notices that the soldiers have lost their composure and are rushing recklessly. He tries to provide cover for them with his bow, but is shocked when his arrows bounce off the orc warrior's armor, realizing they cannot penetrate its defenses. Although Hyunsu's bow has options that increase its penetration and accuracy, he discovers that the orc warrior's hide is like tough armor, making attacking it with the bow alone impossible. Despair spreads among the soldiers, and one wonders if they should retreat again, but Hans shouts that they can't retreat anymore. The orc warrior charges and easily cuts off Hans's hand. Hans realized that orc was difficult to defeat with his current strength. Hyunsu saw Hans fall to the ground, covered in blood. Hyunsu shouts the leader's name, Hans, in an attempt to alert him. Fear spreads among the soldiers as they hear the orcs roar. A soldier cries out in despair that he can't break through their armor no matter what he does, and another feels that they will all be wiped out. At this moment, Hyun-soo takes the lead, shouting to the soldiers that continuing to fight this way will only lead to more losses, and orders them to form a defensive line. He orders them to quickly retreat to the forest behind them, assuring them that he will catch up soon. The soldiers obey his orders, prioritizing the transport of their injured leader to safety and regrouping. And Ben orders them to form a defensive line. Ben tells Hyun-soo that this tactic will only buy them a little time, to which Hyun-soo replies that he only needs 5 minutes. Ben agrees confidently, vowing that they will hold out no matter the cost. Hyun-soo heads deep into the forest, wondering to himself about the idea that arrows cannot penetrate strong armor, and answers in the negative. He takes out Ding's replicating hammer, an epic tool with the ability to duplicate consumables and shorten crafting time, and realizes his plan is possible. Meanwhile, the soldiers are fighting desperately to repel the orc attack in the forest. Ben muttered to himself, affirming that he must hold on no matter what, trying to hold out for the 5 minutes Hyun-soo had requested. Ben said that all they had to do was hold on, but the orc army was advancing on them relentlessly. However, Ben insisted that he would not give up, and he would never retreat. Just as Ben is about to die at the hands of the orc warrior, a mysterious projectile suddenly flies towards the orc, and kills the orc, saving Ben, who wonders in confusion what happened. More projectiles fly from between the trees, hitting the orcs with precision, and it is revealed that Hyun-soo is the one crafting and firing them from his hiding place. The orc warrior roars in anger at this new and unexpected tactic. The orc warrior roars in anger as Hyun-soo readies his weapons. The soldiers watch anxiously, pinning their hopes on Hyun-soo. Hyun-soo has crafted special arrows called Pyeonjun, which are of a rare type and have significantly enhanced penetration power and speed, capable of even shattering rocks. He crafted them using a bamboo guide called a tonga, and replicated the short arrows Aegisol using Ding's hammer. By combining these arrows with his Gakgung bow, a set effect is activated that increases his attack power and penetration ability. The orcs continue their fierce assault, and the soldiers fight valiantly in an attempt to create an opening for Hyun-soo to attack. Hyun-soo seizes the opportunity and fires his special arrow, which hits the orc warrior's helmet directly. Hyun-soo knows that the penetration power of this type of arrow is equivalent to that of a rifle shot. The arrow pierces the thick armor and kills the orc warrior with a single decisive blow. Hyun-soo's level immediately rises by 3. Hyun-soo earns the title Orc Slayer, which increases his attack power against them and makes them feel fear towards him. Terror spreads among the remaining orcs, and they begin to flee, as the soldiers shout to pursue them. Hyun-soo and the soldiers join the chase. Hyun-soo jumped on top of one of the orcs that tried to escape, and fired his arrows at it with deadly precision, leaving it no room to escape. He hit the orc with a piercing arrow that lodged directly in its head, and after a short while, they finally wiped out the remnants of the orc army. With the battle over, the mission to suppress the invading orc army is complete. Hyun-soo's final contribution reaches 92%, and the system announces that he has completed the mission with an exceptional record. The victorious soldiers chant Master Hyun-soo's name. Hyun-soo earns the full trust of the squad and receives a hidden title, Battlefield Commander, which increases his charisma by 10 points. Hyun-soo sees the injured leader Hans receiving aid. Hans tells Hyun-soo with emotion that they had always focused so much on defense that he never thought they would achieve their long-held wish of defeating the orcs. He thanks him deeply. The rest of the soldiers join in expressing their gratitude, and Hyun-soo thanks them in return. Hyun-soo realizes that his additional test is finally over. He thinks about returning to the blacksmith's tower, but then wonders how to get back there. As Hyun-soo wonders how to return, the scene shifts to the central Tower of Blacksmiths, where Ding stands, mournfully declaring that the blacksmith tower has fallen into a state of decline. He explains that all the glory and honor have gone to the knights, while only those blinded by gold coins come to their tower. Ding asserts that they need someone worthy of wielding the legendary sword that will fulfill the prophecy, someone who carries the true spirit of a blacksmith. Many candidates have failed to fulfill the ancient prophecy of the god of blacksmiths, which foretold the appearance of a successor who would restore their glory and prosperity. He is interrupted by one of the tower masters, named Coulson, who sarcastically asks if, among all the tower masters, the great Ding is the only one qualified to face the sword's test. Coulson scornfully wonders if the chosen one is just a hoax, and why they were all summoned in the midst of their busy schedules just to grant testing rights to a strange foreign youth. Ding retorts, scolding Coulson and asking if he hadn't read the letter he sent, explaining that Hyun-soo earned this right on merit after passing the test they had set. Ding adds that Hyun-soo, despite not having changed his class yet, has shown incredible skill in blacksmithing, leading soldiers, and annihilating orc warriors. The others are shocked upon hearing the word annihilation, not believing that someone who hasn't even changed his class could do that. Ding continues his explanation, stating that this test was designed based on the prophecy that says, the successor of the god of blacksmiths must be stronger than anyone else. For this reason, the final answer will be provided by this sword itself. Ding assures them that they will soon see the truth. At that moment, a guard announces the arrival of Lord Hyunsu to the hall, and Ding orders him to be brought in. The massive doors open, and Hyunsu enters the majestic hall. Ding welcomes him, announcing that he has passed the test and has earned the right to enter the sacred sanctum of the blacksmiths. He adds that he is now also eligible to challenge the sword of prophecy left by the god of blacksmiths. Ding tells him that everything will be decided the moment he holds the sword, after which he will receive a suitable reward. Hyunsu thinks about the phrase suitable reward and remembers that he completed an additional SS rank mission during his class change test, wondering if the reward is obtaining a legendary class. Coulson steps forward to congratulate him on standing in this glorious place and praises his impressive performance and the quick thinking he showed at that critical moment. But he adds with a condescending tone that the arrow Hyunsu made was just a replica of a weapon called Solinarian, and that it was all just a matter of luck. Coulson asserts that without the epic bow he possessed, he would have never been able to pass the test. He then challenges Hyunsu with a sly smile to draw the sword, to see if luck will be on his side again. Hyunsu looks at the assembled masters of the blacksmith tower, realizing they are high-class NPCs, and that each of them has built the legends of Ares. He sees that Coulson, the master of the bow blacksmith tower, has a formidable level of 365, and everyone in the hall possesses titles and levels that inspire awe as blacksmiths. Although they are certainly impressive, Hyunsu does not feel that his skills are inferior to theirs. He wonders to himself that if they competed on pure skill alone, without relying on titles, he could win. As Hyunsu approaches the legendary sword, it suddenly glows with immense power, releasing a wave of energy that shocks Ding, Coulson, and all present. The sword glows with immense power and explodes in a flash of dazzling light that engulfs the entire hall. Hyunsu wonders in shock what is happening as he is surrounded by the bright energy. When the light dissipates, Hyunsu finds himself standing in the same spot, but he wonders in confusion where the sword, which has completely disappeared, is. At that moment, Ding realizes what has happened and exclaims that this is how the prophecy is fulfilled. Ding laughs loudly, realizing that they had been inventing rituals and procedures all this time, and that the true successor didn't even need to touch the sword to prove his worth. On the other side, Coulson curses the situation with intense anger, unable to accept what has happened. A system message appears congratulating Hyunsu, announcing the appearance of the first god class in the world of Ares. Coulson's anger flares as he wonders how this novice could receive such an honor. The system message confirms that Hyunsu has advanced to the god of blacksmithing class, leaving Hyunsu and Ding in a state of shock, for this is not just a god class, but the first of its kind in the entire game. Hyunsu gains a unique SSS rank title, God of Blacksmithing, which grants him exceptional abilities. He is now unrestricted by material level when crafting, and his experience automatically increases depending on the type of item made. Most importantly, the prophecy confirms that as a blacksmith, he will become stronger than anyone else. A new class quest, Test of the Sword, also appears, which will begin when he reaches level 100. The other tower masters whisper among themselves that the sword has chosen the foreigner, and that the prophecy of the successor to the god of blacksmiths has been fulfilled. But Coulson shouts that he can never accept this. Coulson argues that they, as masters of the tower, have waited a long time for the great successor who will receive the revelation of the god of blacksmiths, and that they cannot conclude that the sword's choice is the will of the god himself. Ding shouts at him to stop, asserting that the prophecy is absolute. Coulson replies that what is happening is a farce, and reminds them that the prophecy also says the successor must have the recognition of all the tower masters. Accordingly, as the master of the bow blacksmithing tower, Coulson officially challenges Hyunsu to a blacksmith's duel. Coulson lays out his conditions clearly. If Hyunsu defeats him in this duel, he will recognize him as the successor. But if Coulson wins, Hyunsu must renounce the position the Sword of Prophecy has chosen for him. Ding becomes angry with Coulson for losing his senses and orders the others to restrain him immediately. Coulson looks disdainfully at his colleagues, then tells Hyunsu sarcastically that he can run away if he wants, in which case he will grant him the position of Deputy Tower Master, as long as he submissively receives his training. Coulson laughs insolently, but Hyunsu calmly and confidently replies that he accepts his challenge. At that moment, a secret skill of blacksmiths manifests, which is that they speak through their craft. Hyunsu gains the ability to use custom god crafting. A new S-rank quest titled Duel of the Blacksmiths appears, with the objective of winning the duel against Coulson. Coulson explains that their way of dueling is different from knights. It is a clash between two works forged with the souls of their creators in the foundry. The rule is simple. The two swords they make will collide, and whichever one breaks first, its owner loses. Coulson tells him that the best blacksmith workshop has been set up inside the hall, and since Hyun-soo has now acquired blacksmithing skills, one day should be enough for him to make his weapon. Coulson adds sarcastically that if Hyun-soo is truly the god of blacksmithing, then he will see him tomorrow. After Coulson leaves, Ding warns Hyun-soo that he accepted the duel too recklessly, explaining that Coulson is one of the most skilled masters of the tower. Hyun-soo agrees, admitting that if he were still in his previous profession, this would have been a losing battle for sure. In the world of the game Ares, amazing skills and enhancements are granted based on level and titles. And furthermore, each of the tower masters possesses unique special abilities. But Hyun-soo realizes that when his class changed to a god class, those differences disappeared. Now, the only real difference stems from pure skill, thanks to the new skill he has acquired. Hyun-soo had obtained an active god rank skill called Custom God Crafting, which allows him to create a fully customized artifact and grant it any effect he desires, with the crafting difficulty increasing as the desired effect's grade rises. Meanwhile, in his workshop, Coulson recalls his past. He remembers how he was a blacksmith who made swords, and how he was the rightful heir to the sword crafting trade that his family had passed down through generations. But then, someone much more skilled than him appeared, and instead of becoming a sword maker, he was forced to become the master of the bow tower. It was bitter, but he chose to accept it to serve the great Ding. But he can never tolerate Ding bringing a stranger out of nowhere and placing him above him. Coulson pours all his anger and resentment into the hammer as he works, leading to a massive explosion of fire in the foundry. In Hyun-soo's workshop, Ding watches him work on his sword. Ding thinks that the process of granting abilities and effects to artifacts follows a basic law of profit and loss. To gain an advantage in this duel, he must prioritize durability and maximize the weapon breaker attribute. This means that to get the ability he wants, he must craft the sword with the highest possible grade. But he notes with confusion that the durability and attributes of Hyun-soo's sword seem to be only of rare grade. Hyun-soo finishes making his sword, which glows with a bright light, making Ding wonder in amazement about the true thoughts and abilities of the god of blacksmithing. The next day, everyone gathers to watch the duel. Coulson smiles sarcastically, assuming that Hyun-soo managed to make something because he didn't run away. He asks him to show him if he truly deserves to be called the successor of the gods. Coulson presents his sword first, revealing Coulson's Dark Knight, a unique sword with a durability of 12,000 and an attack power of 664, in addition to special abilities that increase its durability by 35% and grant it the latent Weapon Breaker skill. Ding and the rest of the attendees admire Coulson's exceptional skill and how he managed to create such a unique and flawless sword overnight. Coulson boasts that his sword is a magnificent masterpiece, imbued with his family's traditions and secret techniques, and then demands that Hyun-soo show him his sword. Hyun-soo reveals his sword, which shocks Coulson and Ding. It was Hyun's first custom-made sword, of rare grade, with a durability of only 1,000 and an attack power of 177. One of the tower masters looks on with contempt, considering Hyun-soo's sword ridiculous, and thinks that Coulson might have been right after all. Coulson smiles triumphantly, believing that Ding has made a grave mistake this time, and that he is wasting his time with a scoundrel and his pathetic game. Coulson shouts that it will end here and rushes towards Hyun-soo for the swords to clash. Hyun-soo stands firm against the fierce attack, and the sounds of clashing metal echo in the hall. Suddenly, a loud shattering sound is heard, and Ding and the rest of the onlookers watch in complete shock. Coulson's unique sword, Dark Knight, has shattered into pieces and scattered on the floor. Coulson stands speechless, unable to comprehend how it happened. Hyun-soo calmly tells him that a sword's value is not determined by its grade alone. The details of Hyun-soo's sword appear again, revealing its special active ability, a sword that cuts swords, which gives it a 65% chance to cut the opponent's weapon. It was a unique, unrepairable sword, designed to be destroyed when its durability was depleted. At that moment, Ding remembers his father's words, who told him that the god of blacksmithing would one day appear in this land, someone who would shatter their traditional concepts and guide them with new teachings, and that everyone would have the chance to meet him. Ding remembers how a young Coulson eagerly asked his father if he too could receive his teachings if he became a great blacksmith. The scene returns to the recent past in the workshop, where Hyun-soo explained to Ding that merely breaking swords would not convince the tower masters, which is why he decided to make a sword that cuts swords. Ding had wondered at the time if this was really possible, admitting it was never an easy task. Hyun-soo had replied that creating an artifact with the desired properties always comes down to the blacksmith's skill and sweat. Now, Ding realizes the truth. It was a bold choice that defied common sense, backed by the knowledge and ability to turn such a vision into reality. He concludes that Hyunsu possesses all these qualities. The stunned Coulson looks at his shattered sword and whispers the name, God of Blacksmithing, wondering to himself if he too could one day make such a sword. Hyunsu looks at him with a calm smile, and tells him that for him, the word impossible does not exist. Coulson falls to his knees, admitting his defeat. Hyunsu declares to Coulson that he now stands before the god of blacksmithing, and a window appears announcing that the duel of the blacksmith's quest has been successfully completed. As the tower stands tall in the background, the tower masters approach Hyunsu and ask him to accept his reward. They present him with a box containing 500 gold pieces, as well as a scroll containing a recipe for crafting a legendary bow, one of the 10 treasures of the blacksmith's tower. Coulson admits that this is a bow recipe he himself could never complete, and that giving it to someone on their way to becoming a powerful being is its proper use. Ding tells Hyunsu that now that the god of blacksmithing has finally appeared, they will strive anew, and asks him to aim for the pinnacle of power. He encourages him to explore a wider world, declaring that the growth of the god begins now. The scene shifts to the real world, where Hyunsu is celebrating with his friend Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon expresses his happiness and surprise that he is drinking beer on Hyunsu's tab, and enthusiastically congratulates him on obtaining a god rank class, calling it insane. Ji-hoon tells him that he recommended the game to him because it was a shame to waste his talent, but he never imagined he would be this talented at playing. He adds that after all the suffering Hyunsu went through in the blacksmith's workshop, he is finally seeing the light. Ji-hoon asks what difference the god class makes, and Hyunsu replies that he doesn't think there's anything drastically different at the moment. Hyunsu clarifies that more importantly, he has to pay his father's hospital bill tomorrow, and that in the meantime, another 10 million won has been added to the treatment costs. Ji-hoon tells him that he has inquired about his father's new medicine, but since it's not covered by insurance, its cost is at least 20 million won. Additionally, Ji-hoon reminds him of the costs for Hyunsu's own burn treatments. Ji-hoon concludes that just having the class won't be enough to make money. There's a physical limit to the number of artifacts he can craft and sell. He explains that essentially, he needs to level up and gain fame, as the growth of the god begins now. He advises him to build a relationship with the most famous person in Ares, as that way he can get much larger rewards and rare items even from quests of the same grade, and then use that as a basis to craft top-tier artifacts again. Hyunsu thinks about the idea of building a relationship with the most famous person in the game, and Ji-hoon excitedly tells him he has an idea and asks him to wait a bit. Ji-hoon cheerfully announces that his big brother will achieve the best accomplishments and help him advance. Hyunsu scoffs at him and just asks him to try not to get fired from his job. Ji-hoon shows his friend news from the Ares user community, where everyone is talking about how the player, Lord, who is always ranked 21st, has finally reached a legendary class. But Ji-hoon clarifies that this isn't the really amazing part. The amazing thing is that Lord managed to defeat Sword King Barad, something no one had ever done before, as no one had ever even managed to hit him. Players wonder how Lord managed to achieve this. Meanwhile, Hyunsu thinks about the hospital costs of 30 million won per month, and that he has to pay the overdue bills today. He realizes that even if he combines the quest rewards and auction profits, the amount won't be enough, and he cannot let his father's treatment stop. At that moment, Hyunsu receives a notification on his phone that a sword he made has been sold for 53,310 gold pieces, and that the buyer is Lord. Hyunsu immediately runs to the hospital reception, and tells the receptionist that he would like to pay all the outstanding medical bills today, immediately. Hyunsu firmly decides that he can never stop playing Ares now. In the game, he receives a message from Lord, thanking him warmly. Lord explains that thanks to Hyunsu's sword, he was able to fulfill his wish of passing Barad's test, and adds that if one understood the true value of the sword he made, they would realize that the 50 million won he paid is not a large sum at all. Lord's message explains that Hyunsu's sword managed to cut the Sword King's own sword and create an opening, which clearly surprised the king. Lord continues his message, telling Master Hyan that the king of the Goyard Kingdom, the Sword King Barad, is waiting for him. Hyunsu reads in confusion that the king wants him to make him a sword, and Lord urges him to go and meet him. Hyunsu realizes that this opportunity could solve all his problems, from his father's hospital bills to the new medicine. He firmly decides that he must go to meet Barad, and that he will also find his lost workshop on his way. Elsewhere, a stylish-looking man appears. He visits an old blacksmith workshop in this modern age, saying that only 1 month remains on their promise. Back to Hyunsu, he is talking to his friend Ji-hoon on the phone, who tells him in shock that he can't meet Barad. Ji-hoon scoffs at the idea that just getting a god rank class is everything, wondering how a level 10 beginner can meet a king. He explains that to meet a high-level NPC, the player's level and fame must be equally high, and that to meet Barad, he must be at least level 200. But Ji-hoon reassures him that it's not impossible and tells him about the Goyard martial arts tournament. He explains that this is an event held every year in the Goyard kingdom, with level restrictions ranging from 50 to 60. He adds that King Barad is always looking for talented individuals with potential for growth, which is why he holds the tournament for outsiders every year. He confirms that the tournament is scheduled to be held soon, and that the winner receives the prize money directly from Barad himself. Ji-hoon concludes by saying that this is the only way if Hyun-soo wants to meet Barad immediately. Hyun-soo travels in a carriage towards his next destination. Based on Ding's advice, he heads to the castle region. Ding had told him that this place is on the border of the Prime and Goyard kingdoms, where a daily war with the undead rages, and that they would need his abilities more than anyone else. The castle region is a regional battle zone where they fend off the invasion of undead monsters. According to Ding, this place is the fastest for leveling up. Hyun-soo is determined to accomplish the upcoming mission no matter what. Upon arriving in the castle region, he is greeted by Centurion Render, who asks if he is part of the reinforcements from the capital. The commander tells him his timing is perfect, and that they are in dire need of everyone they can get right now. The commander explains that the number of invading undead is constantly increasing. Hyun-soo asks if he knows the reason, and the commander replies in the affirmative. He explains that when the holy Ramasi bell used to ring in the castle region, the invading undead would be weakened, making them easier to exterminate. Until now, the sound of the bell had prevented distant undead from approaching, but a short while ago, the bell was shattered to pieces. The commander adds that they were caught by surprise and were fortifying their defenses, but the enemy began to sense this and is slowly approaching. Hyun-soo asks Commander Render if the bell cannot be repaired. Render suddenly realizes Hyun-soo's identity and eagerly asks if he came on behalf of Master Ding, to which Hyun-soo confirms he was indeed sent by Ding, the master of the Tower of Swordmakers. Render scolds Hyun-soo for not telling him sooner, declaring they were waiting for him, and quickly takes him to see the captain. Hyun-soo meets the captain of the Castle Knights, Carl, who asks if the great Ding himself sent him. Render confirms this, explaining that Hyun-soo wishes to see the Ramas bell in person. Captain Carl informs them that Ding has already judged the bell as unrepairable. He explains that the Lord has already made several secret attempts to restore it, but every expert said the same thing. The shattered Ramas bell is marked as an unrepairable artifact. He adds that there is one person still remaining in castle looking for a way to fix it, but it's all in vain. Render recalls that person was level 290, and yet it proved impossible. Captain Carl asks Hyun-soo about his ability and requests information on his level. Hyun-soo replies that he is currently level 13, which greatly shocks Render. The captain tells Hyun-soo that he doesn't wish to blame him, who came to help them, but at his level, it would be wise to find a place where he can truly contribute. The captain explains that the castle region is now on the brink of annihilation, and when the main army of the undead begins to advance, that will be their doomsday. The captain asserts that it is his duty to protect the Lord and the people to the end, and he must do his duty. At that moment, a soldier bursts in, shouting that the undead are attacking the eastern wall. They are ghouls, and a massive swarm of them is rushing towards them. It appears the ghouls' level is 41. The captain orders his men that the situation is critical and they must hold the gates at all costs. He then orders Render to follow him, and tells Hyun-soo that everything they discussed must remain a secret. Hyun-soo thinks that if it's like the Orc War, he can handle this situation, as a new regional war quest begins, requiring him to repel the invading ghouls and defend the gates. Hordes of ghouls rush towards the walls. The soldiers fight fiercely, and Render explains that undead monsters are hard to kill without weapons imbued with holy power, so they must strike the same spot repeatedly. Render watches in amazement as Hyun-soo fells a ghoul with a single arrow to the head. Despite not possessing any holy power, Hyun-soo uses the flying arrow skill, which pierces through rows of ghouls with a single powerful strike. The arrow shot forth with force, piercing through the bodies of the ghouls one after another. The soldiers cheer enthusiastically, while Render declares he will take them all down no matter how many there are. Hyun-soo thinks to himself that this isn't as bad as he thought, and that if things continue like this, they will succeed in completing the mission. A system message announces the start of a new story. Suddenly, a new threat appears, and a quest requiring the defeat of a giant siege ghoul appears. The soldiers scream in terror at the appearance of the giant ghoul and realize they must call the captain immediately. But another soldier explains that Captain Carl is busy defending the gate and has no extra forces to offer. As the danger approaches, Render fears that the wall will fall. Hyun-soo announces that he will draw the monster's attention for a moment and jumps off the wall. The soldiers scream in alarm, warning him that it's too dangerous on his own. Down below, Hyun-soo confronts the giant ghoul, skillfully dodging its attacks and delivering counterblows. Hyun-soo succeeds in drawing the massive beast's attention, and Hyun-soo thinks that once he takes it down, things will go smoothly. He continues to dodge the ghoul's brutal attacks, and decides he must first pull it as far away from the wall as possible. He wonders if he has successfully drawn its full attention, but the ghoul suddenly attacks him with overwhelming force. Hyun-soo is surprised by the beast's immense speed. To create some distance for himself, he switches his weapon to his bow and fires a flying arrow while sliding on the ground. The arrow hits the ghoul's head directly, but the arrow bounces off, without causing any damage at all, which shocks Hyun-soo. The ghoul retaliates with a fierce attack, causing Hyun-soo's health points to drop below 10%. A system message warns him that when his health points reach 0%, he will be forcibly logged out. Hyun-soo screams, refusing to let it end this way, but he falls to the ground defeated. Hyun-soo gets to his knees, wondering about the absurdity of the forced logout concept. He realizes that if he fails to complete this event, he will not be able to participate in the Goyard martial arts tournament. And if that happens, his father's hospital bills, his own treatment, and restoring his path as a blacksmith will all become impossible. He refuses to go back to being a hopeless person, realizing that this game was his only chance to change his reality. With determination, Hyun-soo declares he cannot give up here no matter what. He fires another arrow that hits the giant ghoul, which screams in pain, but the monster retaliates with a fierce sonic attack, causing Hyun-soo's health points to drop below 3%. Despite his severe injuries, Hyun-soo screams that he will never give up and prepares to fire another arrow, asserting that it's not over yet. But he is horrified to discover that his bowstring has snapped. The ghoul seizes the opportunity and launches a devastating attack, bringing Hyun-soo's health points down to just 1. As he is on the verge of defeat, Hyun-soo refuses to give up this way. Due to his absolute persistence, a system message appears, announcing that a special condition has been met. The message explains that with health points below 5%, his strong desire and will have met the qualifications of the god of blacksmithing, allowing him to acquire a new skill. Hyun-soo acquires the emergency god crafting skill, through which he must forge a weapon within 20 seconds. This weapon can only be used for 30 seconds. Hyun-soo realizes this is his chance. The emergency god crafting process begins with a 19-second countdown. Hyun-soo knows this is his last chance to complete this mission. He selects the materials and begins crafting the weapon with incredible speed. As the countdown continues, as the timer hits 0, Hyun-soo finishes making a brand new sword and leaps towards the monster again. He lets out a war cry, charges towards the giant ghoul, and uses the Scythe of Death sword skill. For a moment, the giant ghoul froze in place, as if time had stopped around it, and he pierces it with his new sword in a single finishing blow. The giant ghoul falls defeated, and the exhausted Hyun-soo looks at the scene. He smiles in victory, realizing he has succeeded. A system message announces he has eliminated the giant ghoul and gained immense experience, raising his level to 38. Hyun-soo thinks with relief that this level is sufficient to participate in the tournament. Hyun-soo collapses from exhaustion as Render, and the soldiers rush towards him, calling his name. Hyun-soo later wakes up to find himself in a bed and fully bandaged. He sits up, wondering how much time has passed, and asks about the ghoul's fate. When Hyun-soo wakes up, he finds himself surrounded by soldiers who are chanting his name and calling him a true hero. One of the soldiers approaches and thanks him, explaining that it was thanks to him they were able to survive that day again. Captain Carl also comes and thanks him, asking how he did it. Hyun-soo replies that he is not sure how to explain it, and thinks to himself that any explanation he gives would seem unbelievable. The captain insists he not be so modest, asserting that he was the one who led today's battle. Hyun-soo thinks about his strategy. He realized that ghouls, like ghosts, are weak to holy power. This reminded him of the Sword of the Four Symbols, a sword known for its ability to exorcise evil spirits and ward off disasters. Thanks to what his father taught him about restoration that day, he was able to bring this sword back to life. Hyun-soo feels grateful that his plan worked out exactly as he imagined. Captain Carl insists on rewarding him and gives him a bag containing 2,000 gold pieces, which makes Hyun-soo very happy as it is equivalent to 2 million won. Captain Carl admits that he misjudged Hyun-soo, thinking he was like the rest of the outsiders. The captain bows, asking him to accept his apology. Hyun-soo reassures him that it's okay and thanks him for acknowledging him, and at that moment, their affinity reaches its maximum. Then Captain Carl makes a formal request to Hyun-soo to repair the Rama's bell. The captain explains that he felt a holy power in the sword Hyun-soo used earlier, and with that ability, he believes he can do it. Hyun-soo apologizes, saying he appreciates his words, but he must head to the kingdom of Goyard now. Captain Carl smiles, admitting he had forgotten an important detail, that Hyun-soo is a blacksmith. He tells him that the Lord possesses a legendary metal, and that if he repairs the bell, he might give it to him. Hyun-soo is surprised by the mention of a legendary metal and becomes interested. Captain Carl takes him to see the bell. He reveals a pile of golden fragments, explaining that this is the Rama's bell. Hyun-soo is shocked. The bell is not just broken, but completely shattered. The captain asks him if he can really remake it, and if he can believe it. Hyun-soo admits that it's worse than he expected, but he believes there must be a way. At that moment, a woman approaches them and coldly declares that the bell cannot be repaired. She adds that even at her level of 290, she cannot do it, and wonders how he can claim to be able to. She accuses him of being a fraud. Earlier, a woman named Belle, or team leader Kim, announces she is leaving the guild. The master of the Golden Shield Guild, Krone, asks her in shock why she is suddenly resigning, and if she doesn't care about everything she has built so far. She replies that she is tired now. Krone tries to persuade her to stay, saying that if she can bring in the blacksmith Hyun this time, things will get better. But she angrily retorts that this is the problem and asks him how they can offer 500 million a year to a random player. Krone argues that the blacksmith Hyun sold his first crafted sword for 50 million won and that if they can recruit him, the guild will rise quickly. Belle reminds Crown that the blacksmith they brought in before was just an external source, and the one who came after took the deposit and ran. She adds that another blacksmith won the lottery and disappeared, and continues to list the failures. Belle asks him to stop, explaining to him now how difficult it is to clean up all this mess, and insists that he not try to stop her. Krone reluctantly agrees to her decision, but assures her that he will always keep a place for her if she decides to return. The scene shifts to Castle. Belle arrives to find the village in ruins and wonders in shock how a village like this could disappear. She thinks that this is the place that showed her that the people here are not just non-player characters, but real people like her. Belle believes that if they could just fix the Rama's bell, perhaps they could stop all this destruction. She decides she needs to go and check the bell again. When she reaches the bell room, she is surprised to find Hyunsoo there. She accuses him of being a fraud. Hyunsoo replies in confusion, asking who she is to say that. She answers that she is a blacksmith of a much higher rank than him. Captain Carl intervenes and asks everyone not to fight. He introduces Belle as the advanced blacksmith he mentioned earlier, and introduces Hyunsoo as the person who helped eliminate the ghouls. The captain cheerfully adds that now, on top of that, Hyunsoo says he will fix the bell. Belle wonders to herself sarcastically how a level 38 player could help eliminate ghouls and now claim to fix the bell. Belle accuses Hyunsoo of trying to take advantage of the deteriorating situation in the castle region. Hyunsoo coolly asks her what she's been talking about since she arrived. Hyunsoo ignores her and begins to examine the bell fragments, wondering if they have changed in some way. A system window appears confirming that the Rama's bell is imbued with holy power, is completely destroyed, and repair is impossible. Hyunsoo concludes that there is no chance of repair through traditional methods. He then takes a hammer and strikes one of the fragments with force. Belle screams in terror, telling him to stop. Hyunsoo speaks calmly and tells her that it is possible. He explains that restoration is possible. Belle asks him angrily if he doesn't know the meaning of unrepairable artifact. At that moment, a soldier rushes into the room shouting for the captain and tells them that the undead are pouring in massive numbers. Everyone is shocked. A system window appears and Hyunsoo initially thinks it's a new quest, but he realizes it's an update notification. The notification announces that the castle region update has begun and that after the update is complete, the updated region will be created. They realize that the region is turning into a land of the undead. Belle believes this is the end, but Hyunsoo corrects her, saying that if they make the bell, they can stop it. Belle describes his words as impossible, but Hyunsoo insists it is possible. Then Hyunsoo turns to Belle and asks her directly about the castle region. Wasn't she the one who wanted to protect it? Belle admits that Hyunsoo is right, but she wonders how to do it. Hyunsoo asks her to follow him, adding the shards of the Rama's bell to his inventory. Hyunsoo enthusiastically declares that they will protect this place together. Captain Carl tells Hyunsoo that he is counting on him to repair the bell and that he will hold them off for as long as possible, so Hyunsoo tells him to leave it to him. The captain raises his sword and shouts to his men not to lose hope and that they will fight until the end. He urges them to hold on a little longer, insisting that they must protect Cassel. In the blacksmith's workshop, Belle asks Hyunsoo what he is going to do. Hyunsoo explains that when he shattered the shard earlier, the holy power did not disappear, which means the power is within the material itself. He plans to melt it down and forge a new bell, believing that if the bell is complete, the holy power will be stronger. Belle comments that she has never seen a skill like this before, and Hyunsoo replies that a skill is not always needed to fix something. The smelting process begins, and Belle wonders in amazement if he intends to do this by hand in this day and age. Hyunsoo asks her why she isn't helping, explaining that he cannot do it alone. Meanwhile, in the game developer's offices, a developer watches the countdown for the Cassel region update, with less than an hour remaining. He declares in despair that they are in trouble, and that this update is about to go to waste. A colleague asks him why he is grumbling on update day, and Kim Tae-suk tells him to look at the screen. The colleague wonders if it's about that blacksmith player. He asserts that a player can't fix it, but their female colleague clarifies that Belle is no ordinary player. The fateful day of the Cassel region update arrives, and the battle intensifies. Carl shouts orders to stop the undead and prevent them from entering. They fight with all their might, panting from exhaustion. The soldiers suffer brutal attacks, and one falls to a huge monster, but Carl intervenes and kills the beast. Captain Carl rushes to check on him and shouts to his men to hold on a little longer. He urges them to protect Cassel, the place where they were born and raised all their lives. In the midst of the fight, Captain Carl's sword begins to crack. He wonders in despair why this is happening now. As his sword is about to shatter, a monster lunges at him, and the captain shouts in defiance. He curses the situation, believing that everything will end like this. Suddenly, a powerful ringing sound echoes across the battlefield. The undead clutch their heads and scream in pain. They burst into flames and fall one by one, as the mysterious sound of the bell continues to spread. The bell's echo resonates throughout the region, and the defending forces look joyfully towards the source of the sound. Captain Carl exclaims happily that the Rama's bell has been repaired. In the developers' offices, one of the developers spits out his drink in shock, unable to believe what he is seeing. In the blacksmith's workshop, Hyunsu was putting the final touches on the bell, and the developers wonder if they really succeeded. The developer asks his team in disbelief if he has lost his mind. Back in the workshop, Hyunsu and Bell look at the hammer used for the work, and Bell asks how they actually managed to achieve it. In the office, a developer shouts, asking what is happening and if the update has really failed. Kim Tae-suk explains that man, Hyunsu, has not slept for a moment since the update countdown began a full week ago. It is revealed that 5 days ago, Hyunsu went straight to the blacksmith's workshop in the Cassel region, gathered the city's workforce, and began repairing the Rama's bell. He explained that they must melt everything down to its basic materials, or more accurately, extract the divine power from them. While Hyunsu was drawing the blueprints, he left Bell in charge of managing the workers and supplying the battlefield. After that, Hyunsu began the custom god crafting process. He planned to use his skill to maximize the bell's power against the undead and evil forces, and to add a skill that could inflict direct damage. He shouted at the workers to increase the furnace heat. With the shared will to protect the Cassel region, everyone worked towards a single goal. Hyunsu yelled at them to focus and not leave any impurities, while the workers were determined to do whatever it took to protect their homeland. They believed this would imbue the bell with even greater divine power. The scenes show the passing of days, from the 4th day before the end, to the 3rd and 2nd, and finally to the last day, where Bell continued to watch, exhausted. Bell wakes up suddenly, wondering when she fell asleep. She sees the completed bell in awe, disbelieving that Hyunsu worked on it for days without a break. A system window appears before her, announcing that her apprentice title is glowing. She has witnessed a crafting process performed by a master craftsman blacksmith, which increased her advanced blacksmithing mastery efficiency by 22%. She wonders in shock if this young man is truly a master craftsman. Hyunsu tells her that the noise must have been very loud, but she slept soundly. Bell protests, saying she wasn't unconscious for that long. Hyunsu reassures her that they are in the final stages and asks her to wait. Bell suddenly asks him if he is Hyun the blacksmith. Hyunsu confirms his identity, then places his hand on the newly completed bell, which glows with immense power and is imprinted with his special symbol. Bell looks at the completed bell with admiration, saying that calling it beautiful doesn't do it justice. It is a magnificent masterpiece. A system window appears, explaining that this is Hyun's second custom creation in progress, unique, with infinite durability. It is a reconstructed artifact that was unrepairable. Bell wonders if this is the reason for its power, admitting she has never seen anyone succeed at something like this before. Suddenly, Bell grabs Hyunsu's hands tightly and eagerly asks him to be with her from now on. Hyunsu asks her in confusion what she means, wondering if it's a love confession, which Bell denies in embarrassment. The scene returns to the decisive day of the battle, where Hyunsu strikes the newly completed bell. Waves of holy energy emanate from the bell, annihilating the hordes of undead who scream in agony as they burn. The soldiers gasp as they watch the horrific scene. A system message confirms that Hyunsu has created a new bell and eradicated the undead, and that he can now prevent the update and create a new story. Hyunsu shouts triumphantly that they did it, thanking God he wasn't too late. But he immediately collapses, overcome by a state of extreme exhaustion that leaves him stunned. Bell rushes to him, anxiously asking if he is okay, while a system message announces the completion of the Repair the Rama's Bell quest. Another message indicates that the rewards have been changed. Meanwhile, the news spreads quickly throughout the Ares player community. Someone asks if others know the blacksmith Hyun and posts a topic titled, "The Reason the Cassel Region Update Failed," with pictures of the tower before and after the bell's repair. Players recognize the name Hyun from Hyun's first custom sword and are stunned that he repaired the Rama's bell. As a result, huge numbers of players start following Hyun's workshop. Hyunsu wakes up in his bed to the sound of continuous notifications, wondering about all the noise. He sees that his workshop's follower count has jumped to 101,655, and he is amazed, wondering how this is possible. Hyun-soo smiles, realizing it was a good thing he engraved his name Hyun on the bell, as now everyone who visits the Kassel region will see it. Someone knocks on the door and asks for permission to enter. Captain Carl enters enthusiastically, announcing that their region's savior has awakened. He tells him that he has come with the Lord's approval to give him his reward for making the bell, which is 330,000 gold pieces. Hyun-soo is stunned by the amount, which is equivalent to 330 million won. The captain adds that the savior deserves a reward of this caliber, and presents him with a box as a gift from the Lord himself. Hyun-soo opens it to find the legendary metal, orichalcum. Hyun-soo thanks the captain. Captain Carl insists that they are the ones who should be thanking him, explaining that unlike other outsiders, Hyun-soo did not abandon their region and protected them. The captain expresses his sincere gratitude. Hyun-soo feels the captain's sincerity and thinks that he only did what had to be done, realizing that the despair of people in Aries is no different from their despair in reality. Hyun-soo then takes his leave of the captain, explaining that he needs to return to where he used to live for a while, and the captain immediately agrees. Hyun-soo decides it's time to reclaim his workshop and logs out of the game. The captain and his colleague look at the spot where Hyun-soo disappeared, commenting that outsiders are a strange group. The next day in Gyeongju, Hyun-soo meets with the real estate investor Kang Hyuk-soo. Kang looks at his phone, which displays a message stating that Mr. Hyun-soo has deposited 330 million won. Kang tells Hyun-soo that he really did it, expressing his astonishment and deep admiration. The scene flashes back to 1 year prior. Hyun-soo sits with Kang Hyuk-soo, who is reviewing the property papers. Kang tells him that the total amount comes to 330 million won. Kang mentions that he heard about the big fire and reassures Hyun-soo that the amount should be more than enough for the hospital bills, urging him to keep his head up. As Kang prepares to leave, Hyun-soo asks in a hesitant voice if he could buy back the workshop. Kang Hyuk-soo asks for clarification on what Hyun-soo just said. Hyun-soo repeats his question, explaining that if he could somehow raise the money, would Kang sell the workshop back to him? Kang advises him that buying a burned-down workshop would just be a waste of money and that he would be better off buying a new one if he needed it. Hyun-soo insists that it must be their workshop, as the place is filled with memories of his father. Kang thinks it over, and then decides to grant Hyun-soo a grace period of exactly 1 year. However, he warns him that the second the year is up, he will sell the property to the first buyer. Hyun-soo thanks him warmly, while Kang tells him he will be waiting for his call. Back in the present, reading the deposit message again, Kang repeats his deep admiration for Hyun-soo. He admits that although he was the one who made the offer, in his heart, he knew he was asking for the impossible. Hyun-soo explains that the 1 year period was just a rough estimate, and that the opportunity to sell such a property could have ended at any time, but Kang had already kept his promise. Hyun-soo asks why Kang was so kind to him. Kang replies that he was the first person ever to ask to buy back a property after selling it. He adds that he just wanted to encourage someone like him. Hyun-soo thanks Kang again, and thinks to himself that thanks to him, he didn't have to give up the workshop, and that he needs to give him something in return. Hyun-soo asks him if he is familiar with a game called Aries. Kang laughs and replies that of course he knows it. Who hasn't heard of it these days? Hyun-soo reveals that he is actually a blacksmith in Aries. Kang comments that this is the perfect job for him. Hyun-soo offers to make him an artifact as a gift. Kang excitedly asks if he can make him a custom piece, regardless of the effect, type, or level. Hyun-soo smiles and replies, of course, promising that he will make him anything he wants. Hyun-soo enters a tavern, where Belle calls him over to sit with her. This is the first time they have seen each other since the undead incident. Belle complains about how hard it was to find him, and Hyun-soo apologizes, but she says she was just kidding. Belle properly introduces herself, explaining that she was the chief strategist for the Golden Shield Guild, and the one who built the guild into what it is today. She adds that on that day, she became certain of one thing, that Hyun-soo would one day become one of the top-ranking players. Therefore, Belle gets straight to the point. She tells him that when he eventually creates a guild, she wants to be its first member. Hyun-soo jokingly reminds her that she was calling him a scammer just the other day. Belle immediately apologizes, but justifies her stance by saying anyone would have misunderstood in that situation. Hyun-soo tells her he was just kidding, and that he is also looking forward to working with her, and they shake hands. But before that, Hyun-soo decides to tell her his plans. Belle is shocked to learn that Hyun-soo is going to meet the Sword King Parad, one of the 10 legends. Hyun-soo confirms that he will enter the Joyard martial arts tournament, adds that the bread he's eating is delicious, and wonders if the winner will receive their prize from Parad himself. Belle confirms this but is worried, explaining that this tournament is a gathering of rising stars from all over, and it's no joke. Hyun-soo simply replies that this is exactly why he must win. Bell wonders how he can say that so simply, and if he can even taste his food. Hyun-soo reassures her not to worry, and tells her that he will aim for the top using his specialty, leaving her puzzled. When Hyun-soo asks if she is going to eat, she replies that she is full. The day of the Joyard Martial Arts Tournament arrives. The tournament's head, Baek, welcomes the outsiders. He announces that the tournament will begin the moment he steps off the stage and that they will all face monsters shortly. He adds that although they may not be able to see him, His Majesty, King Parad, is watching them, so they must be on their best behavior. He wishes them luck, and a system window announces the start of the tournament. In the arena, the participants face the monsters. The first mission is to survive the golem's attack, with a 1-hour time limit. The participants rush into battle enthusiastically, with one expecting a golem to be the first opponent. A system window announces the first trial of the tournament. Whoever kills the stone golem, level 109, will receive a reward. A participant is surprised by the golem's high level, wondering if it was always this high and noting that the first round is supposed to be easy. Another participant recklessly charges, declaring, "First come, first served," but is immediately crushed by the golem, resulting in a forced logout. The other participants scream in terror and try to dodge the attacks, but they fall one by one and are logged out as well. The participants scream in terror, realizing this situation is completely different from the information they had, and wonder how they are supposed to defeat this thing. Hyun-soo stands observing the situation, while the other players curse their bad luck, realizing they've been deceived. Elsewhere, the tournament head Baek realizes the tournament has turned into a complete disaster. A stone golem from the high-level tournament has been mixed in by mistake. Baek fears that at this rate all tournament participants will be eliminated and decides he must see His Majesty immediately. Baek rushes into the king's chamber shouting, "Your Majesty," and insists they must stop the tournament now. But King Parad calmly rejects his request. Baek asks in confusion, "What? But the king interrupts him, asking if he still doesn't understand the situation. The king tells him to look closely at that warrior. In the arena, Hyun-soo fires a glowing arrow that hits the stone golem. It is revealed that this is Hyun-soo's third custom creation, the Orichalcum Aegisil, a special arrow that has the ability to return to the user after being fired. The other players are amazed, wondering how an arrow can return like a boomerang. Hyun-soo thinks that this arrow is the reward he got from the Cassel region, and that it's amazing that it's made of the legendary Orichalcum, performing as well as expected. Hyun-soo fires the arrow again, hitting the golem. As it returns, the arrow nearly hits another player, who yells at Hyun-soo to be careful unless he's trying to kill him, and Hyun-soo immediately apologizes. As a result of the hit, the stone golem is stunned for 4 seconds. The players shout that the golem is stunned, and that this is their chance to attack. The players launch an all-out assault, but the golem recovers and roars in anger. It begins to attack violently, and the players shout and warn each other. The golem continues its random rampage and heads towards Hyun-soo, while one player shouts that they just need to hold on a little longer and it will be over, and another yells at Hyun-soo to run. The players take the hit and struggle to stay alive. At the last moment, Hyun-soo switches his weapon to his daylight sword, declaring that it's not over yet. He blocks the golem's massive blow, but the force of the impact throws him to the ground. Baek pleads with King Parad, saying they must stop the tournament now, pointing out that the participant seems to have reached his limit. The king watches with interest, and suddenly something unexpected happens that catches his attention. In the arena, despite having fallen, Hyun-soo uses the emergency god crafting skill again. The crafting process completes, resulting in the Damascus Wool-do, a weapon specifically designed to cleave through stone. With a single powerful strike, Hyun-soo successfully defeats the stone golem. The Damascus Wool-do disappears as it was an emergency creation, while Hyun-soo receives a flood of level-up notifications. Hyun-soo is amazed to realize his level has increased by 14, while the other players look at him in disbelief, wondering how he managed to defeat it. Hyun-soo asks them in confusion if they weren't supposed to defeat it. The players reply that the mission was to survive, so how could they defeat a monster with such a huge level gap? They explain that the trial consists of 3 stages, and the appearance of this golem had already disrupted the balance. It wasn't there to be defeated. Hyun-soo now understands the situation. Suddenly, Hyun-soo feels extremely dizzy and loses consciousness. The other players gather around him, wondering if he has fainted, and notice that he hasn't been logged out. They start discussing how many weapons he used, initially thinking he was multi-skilled, but now realizing he is a weapon master, and wish they had just one of his amazing weapons. At that moment, Beck announces to all participants that due to an error on the organizer's part, the martial arts tournament will be suspended, and orders them all to leave. News of Hyunsu's achievement spreads rapidly online, with thousands watching a live stream of him unconscious in the arena. Viewers wonder how he managed to defeat the stone golem alone and ask for information about his bow and arrow. Someone notices that Hyunsu has dropped his arrow, and upon zooming in, they see the name Hyun engraved on it. The viewers immediately connect him to the Hyun who created the unrepairable bell in the Kassel region. They are stunned, wondering how a blacksmith could be so powerful, and marvel at his superior equipment. In the offices of the Beholder Company, the customer service team faces a flood of inquiries about why the tournament was suspended. The staff cannot provide clear answers, merely stating that it was a decision made by Ares's free will, or that it relates to an internal issue in the Kingdom of Joyard, and they apologize to the customers repeatedly. In the development department, an employee tells her team leader that there is a big problem. He tells her he is busy now. She informs him that the Joyard martial arts tournament has been suspended, and he replies nonchalantly that they knew this would happen. The employee shouts that this is not the problem, but that King Parad has summoned the user Hyunsu. The team leader is shocked, wondering how they could meet so quickly while the tournament arrangements still require time. The employee confirms that Hyunsu is on his way to the reception hall now. The team leader realizes he is in trouble and that he will be working all night again. He comments that this user defies all logic and his actions are unpredictable. He wonders what will happen if Hyunsu succeeds in Parad's request and their affinity reaches its maximum. He concludes that in that case, Hyunsu will master the art of the Sword King's swordsmanship and become the strongest blacksmith ever. The developer team leader comments that it won't be easy, as the decision rests on Parad's free will. His colleague expresses a feeling that Hyunsu will succeed, which worries the team leader, who asks her not to say such ominous things. The next day in the game, Hyunsu is escorted to the throne room, thinking that he will meet Parad sooner than he expected. Hyunsu kneels before King Parad, who addresses him as stranger. Parad explains that normally the prize would have been presented in front of everyone, but he asks for his understanding in simplifying matters due to the unexpected incident. He adds that everyone will acknowledge his remarkable performance as a weapon master yesterday. The king offers Hyunsu a monetary prize of 13,000 gold pieces. But Hyunsu suddenly stands up and interrupts the king, saying, "Your Majesty, I heard you were looking for me." The king's guards are enraged by his insolence, believing that such arrogance cannot be tolerated, no matter how rare the warrior, and wonder how he dares to speak while his majesty has not finished speaking. Hyunsu calmly replies, announcing that he is Hyun the blacksmith. The guards' anger grows, and they prepare to remove him immediately. But King Parad orders them to stop, confirming that Hyunsu is the guest he has been waiting for. Hyunsu formally greets His Majesty King Parad. Parad, one of Ares's 10 legends, tells him that he has taken his time. Hyunsu replies that the road here was rough. Parad asks him if he knows why he was summoned. Hyunsu guesses that it is to commission him to forge a sword, which the king confirms. Parad explains that even the best blacksmith in the kingdom, and even Tank, the master of the sword tower, have failed at this task. For this reason, he wants to know what makes Hyunsu trustworthy. Under immense pressure, Hyunsu replies that he has only one thing. He has come all this way believing in nothing but his own skill. King Parad laughs loudly, impressed by the stranger's boldness. The king decides to bet on Hyunsu's confidence and orders his men to bring what he has prepared. A glowing chest is presented before Hyunsu. The chest contains 100-year-old cold iron, a special ore that has absorbed cold for 100 years and possesses fire resistance and ice properties. Hyunsu looks at the metal in amazement, thinking it looks like it came straight out of a martial arts novel. Parad specifies his request. He wants a sword of epic grade or higher that emanates frost. He promises that if he is satisfied, he will grant him anything he desires. But he warns him that if he is disappointed, he will never set foot in the Kingdom of Joyard again. A quest window appears, titled The King's Commission, which requires the king's acknowledgement. The reward is the fulfillment of one request from Parad, and the penalty for failure is expulsion from the Kingdom of Joyard. Hyunsu accepts the quest, promising that he will not disappoint the king and that he will surely succeed. Later in the blacksmith's workshop, Hyunsu feels his neck burn from the intensity of the gaze directed at him. He turns to see a woman watching him. It is Bella, the vice-captain of the Knights of the Kingdom of Joyard, and her level is 301. Hyunsu thinks to himself that even though he is a stranger, placing a guard on him so blatantly is excessive, but he retracts his thought, considering it natural that they wouldn't trust him easily. Bella tells him to pretend she's not there and to focus on his work. Hyunsu asks her with a sarcastic smile if his staring is that obvious, and she replies, yes. Bella thinks to herself who this young man thinks he is, remembers that His Highness has pinned his last chance on them, and vows that he had better not fail. Hyunsu feels the immense pressure she is putting on him. Suddenly a doorbell rings in the game, puzzling Hyun-soo. He apologizes to Bella, explaining that it seems something has happened in his real world, and asks if she minds if he steps out for a moment. Hyun-soo wakes up in his capsule in the real world and goes to open the door. He is surprised to see the landlady. Hyun-soo asks her the reason for her visit. The lady tells him that she has decided to sell the house, explaining that her husband has recently been unemployed and they need to sort things out, and she apologizes to him. Hyun-soo tells her not to apologize, feeling that he is the one who should be sorry for renting the place for cheaper than the market rate and being late with the rent several times. He asks her when he needs to leave, and she tells him that she will need him to vacate within 2 weeks. The lady feels ashamed before him, but he asks her not to say that, assuring her that he has lived well here and bows to her respectfully. After she leaves, Hyun-soo repeats the deadline to himself. 2 weeks. Hyun-soo feels exhausted. He thinks that although he earned a good amount of money in Aries, his father's hospital bills cost tens of millions, and buying back the burnt workshop cost him 330 million won. Moreover, he hasn't even started his own burn treatments. He wonders in despair, where is he supposed to go now? At that moment, his phone rings. The caller is Kim Hyeon, Belle. When he answers, Belle asks him what he is doing and tells him she has a good idea about the quest, which is why she called. Hyun-soo asks her to call him back later, explaining that his head is a bit preoccupied right now. Belle asks him if something is wrong. Hyun-soo tells her that Parad's quest is important, but he suddenly has to move out of his house in 2 weeks. Belle angrily reminds him how important this quest is. She tells him that she expects 2 main outcomes from it. Belle explains that right now, people are arguing about whether the champion of the Joyard martial arts tournament and the blacksmith Hyun are the same person. She suggests he not clarify it yet, and when he reveals his path later, it will blow up. She adds that he received a commission to forge a sword from Parad, one of the most influential NPCs in Aries. She asks him to just imagine Parad revealing a new sword engraved with the name Hyun. That is the moment his value will skyrocket, which is why she said she would stand by him. Hyun-soo thanks her, saying she has brought him back to his senses, and promises he will do his best. Hyun-soo returns to the game to find Bella shouting at him angrily. Bella yells at Hyun-soo, asking why he is only now returning, and he asks in confusion what happened. Bella tells him that His Royal Highness, Parad, has been trapped in the dragon's nest. Hyun-soo asks in shock where King Parad is trapped, then asks for the exact location of the dragon's nest. Bella asks incredulously how he can be surprised when he doesn't even know where it is, and Hyun-soo replies that he thought he should at least act surprised. Bella tells him that time is running out, and quickly explains. She clarifies that the Flame Nest is the general name for the fire-type monster region. Among them is the Efreet Dungeon, a place from which no one has returned alive except for His Majesty King Parad. Hyun-soo wonders why the king would enter a dungeon he has already visited, especially since he hasn't received the weapon he commissioned him to make. Bella answers that it is because His Majesty's target of revenge is there. Hyun-soo is surprised to hear the words, target of revenge. The scene shifts to the Flame Nest, where King Parad arrives, suffering from his injuries. He looks at the gate before him, realizing that once he steps through it, everything will begin. He thinks that even his current sword will not be enough. He feels relieved that his men were able to escape safely, but he knows that reinforcements will take at least 3 days to arrive. He smiles bitterly, admitting that perhaps he should have waited for the stranger to finish the sword. A sad memory creeps into his mind, and he wishes his son Ban were still alive. He would have been about the same age as that young man Hyun-soo. He remembers how his son died in his arms, calling out, "Father." In that painful memory, Parad asks his son how he came here without telling him. Ban replies that he thought if he conquered this dungeon, he would finally become a son his father could be proud of. But he now realizes he was too weak and apologizes. Parad shouts at his son that there is no need to apologize and tells him to hold on to life. But Ban apologizes to his father again, then breathes his last in his arms, leaving Parad to cradle his lifeless body in despair. In the present, Parad decides it would have been better to wait for the stranger's sword, but he cannot let Efreet escape. He has waited years for him to appear and is determined to eliminate him. Then Parad walks steadily toward the blazing dungeon gate. Bella explains that since the prince's death, His Majesty has tried every way to hunt down Efreet, but Efreet has not revealed himself so easily. She adds that this might be His Majesty's last chance. Bella frankly admits that she finds it difficult to trust a stranger like Hyun-soo, but she adds that if His Majesty entrusted this to him, there must be a reason. Then Bella bows before him, and as a knight of the Kingdom of Joyard, she begs him to save His Majesty. A new emergency quest appears, titled, A Sword That Can Save the King. The quest requires accepting Bella's request, with the reward being an increase in her trust, and the penalty for failure being Parad's death. The mission is to forge a blade capable of saving him. Hyun-soo thinks about Parad's tragic story. He remembers how, on that day, he too almost lost everything in the flames. He wonders if he could have moved on if he had lost his family like Parad. With firm resolve, he tells Bella that he will do everything he can. Hyun-soo immediately starts working in the workshop, hammering the metal enthusiastically, then plunging it into water. He thinks that they say Efreet's heat can melt even unique grade weapons. He concludes that he will need to forge a weapon that surpasses the unique grade. He decides to focus on the effect of the frozen stone, which is unsolvable. As he works, a system window appears, telling him that his understanding of the 100-year-old cold iron has deepened. Another message appears, announcing that the spirit of the blacksmith has been activated. The message explains that while forging this blade, Hyun-soo immersed himself in the work more than anyone else. His passion, determination, and empathy have driven him into a state of complete focus. As a result, the system announces that Hyun's first legendary grade sword is being forged. A bright light emanates from the workshop, and Bella wonders if it is complete. Hyun-soo stands holding the new, glowing sword, and declares that it is time to go save His Majesty King Parad. Meanwhile, in the flame nest, Parad screams in pain as he takes a heavy blow. He gets to his knees, determined to end this today. The leader of the flame nest, Efreet, of level 409, appears before him. Parad shouts Efreet's name, who scoffs at him, saying he has no idea how long he has waited to meet him. Then they charge at each other in an epic battle, and Efreet lets out a deafening roar. The fierce battle between King Parad and Efreet continues. Parad blocks Efreet's violent fiery attacks, but Efreet's immense power overwhelms him. Parad is surprised to see that Efreet's sword is formed from pure flame, and a series of violent blows that he cannot block follows. Efreet shouts in triumph and unleashes a wave of his flames, forcing Parad to retreat in pain. Efreet laughs triumphantly, while Parad kneels, defeated, and curses the situation, believing it has ended in failure. Efreet prepares to deliver the final blow, and throws his spear towards Parad. A huge icy sword appears out of nowhere, stopping Efreet's attack. Hyun-soo and Bella have arrived just in time. Bella shouts at King Parad and tells him to use the new sword. Parad grabs the new glowing sword that was thrown before him. A system window appears, displaying the details of Hyun's custom sword for Parad, legendary. The sword possesses amazing special abilities, plus 343% resistance to the fire attribute, plus 194% attack power with the ice attribute, and a massive plus 397% increase in ice attribute attack power against fire monsters. It also has an active skill called Frost Flower. Hyun-soo asks the king to try using it. Parad grips the sword, which glows with icy power. Parad unleashes the Frost Flower skill, and a mighty wave of ice sweeps across the battlefield, freezing Efreet's fiery attacks. Efreet screams in pain as the sword's icy power counters its heat. Parad declares that it is over. Parad lunges forward, and his icy sword collides with Efreet's fiery body and shatters it. Efreet is shocked, and Parad continues his attack. Parad succeeds in delivering a finishing blow, defeating Efreet. A system window announces that he has defeated the boss monster. Parad breathes a sigh of relief, believing they have finally succeeded. But suddenly, Efreet's body begins to glow and explode. Hyun-soo wonders what is happening. Bella realizes that some monsters self-destruct before they die. Parad is caught in the massive explosion that destroys the entire dungeon. Bella screams at King Parad to get out immediately, warning him of the danger. But Parad orders her to stay put, considering it a royal command. He looks at a locket with a picture of his son and thinks that he wants to end things here. Bella feels hopeless. She knows she must save His Majesty, but he has ordered her not to come. She wonders in confusion what she should do. Hyun-soo steps forward alone and tells her that he will go and get His Majesty. He uses the emergency god crafting skill to create a flame-resistant shield. Hyun-soo enters the blazing inferno and calls out for His Majesty King Parad. The king orders him to go back, saying he has done more than his share. Hyun-soo refuses to leave, insisting that he came here to accompany him and will not leave. Hyun-soo asks him if his decision is because of the person in the locket. The king confirms this, admitting that because of him, his son left this world, and wonders with what face he can continue to live. Hyun-soo asks him if he thinks the person in the locket would be happy about this. Parad becomes furious, shouting at Hyun-soo that he dares not speak, and that no one can know this feeling. The grief of losing a child because of him. Parad grabs Hyun-soo by the collar and shouts at him how he dares to even talk about it. Hyun-soo admits that he will never know this specific sorrow, but he clarifies that he too almost lost a dear family member, revealing that his father is in a coma. Hyun-soo tells the king that he used to pray every day for his father to open his eyes, but now he is just happy that his father is alive in any way. He assures him that this is what his son must feel too. Parad embraces Hyunsu as he cries, asking him to let his son go in peace. The king sees a vision of his smiling son and apologizes to him repeatedly, admitting that his foolish father was wrong. Hyunsu whispers in his ear that he must live, and asks him, shouldn't he become a father his son can be proud of? King Parad agrees with him, saying he shouldn't be a shameful father. King Parad smiles and tells Hyunsu to go. They emerge from the collapsing flames, and Bella rushes towards them shouting, "Stranger, is His Majesty okay?" Hyunsu reassures her that His Majesty is fine. As he tells her he will be back soon, a system message appears, announcing that his health points have reached 0 and he will be forcibly logged out. Hyunsu reassures her that strangers don't die, and then disappears. Bella looks on in shock, while King Parad collapses into her arms, whispering that the boy saved him. Bella shouts His Majesty's name and tells him to regain consciousness. Parad loses consciousness with a smile on his face. Hyunsu wakes up in the real world, and a system message appears, stating that due to the forced logout penalty, his level has decreased by 1. He looks at his bandaged hands with tears in his eyes and vows to his father that he will move forward.